Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the show today. Happy to have you here. Hopefully everyone had themselves a good weekend. I know plenty of people who didn't, but we'll be talking about that soon. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that the various things that took over the weekend. But let's deal with our more personal things. We got a Thundero here, Lord of Lightning, and from on mountaintop, and little elven cutie girls falling behind him. Like Thor. How was your weekend?
Oh, it was fine. Pretty boring weekend for the most part. Mostly just hung out with the wife. We every year we go to there's a big apple butter festival
Ooh,
happens to
apple
be here.
butter festival. That sounds good.
Yeah, there's this big one at this very large orchard nearby because this is Ohio, you see. In
Mm,
Ohio,
mhm.
we like the apples. We grow them. They're everywhere. You can't really escape. I even have one in my yard, an apple tree. Like there's apple trees everywhere.
Nice.
Um, And so there's this big, big apple orchard. They also have pumpkins, things like this.
Hmm.
And so we go there and, with her family and a bunch of the kids, and they get to pick apples and they get to have fun. So we did that today. We do it every year. Um,
Sounds fun.
and then otherwise, we just vegged out for the most part. We've been watching, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's a show called Grimm that ended in
Yeah,
2017,
yeah,
apparently. Um, we've been watching that because we never watched it really. But other
yeah. It
than
was
that,
fun. It fizzles out toward the end, but
yeah.
uh, but yeah, it was fun. That's just a rip off of Fables,
Yeah,
but it's good though. I enjoyed it. We watched it. Remember Fables, baby? Grimm. Remember that show? Grimm was set in Toronto. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. No, it's
She
pretty
said it
good.
was
We
interesting. It
like it.
was. Yeah, it was fun.
It's one of those shows that is really it's awesome, but it's also makes me sad. And the reason it makes me sad is because it's not that old, and it's like looking at a whole nother world.
uh,
Because there's not there's there at least I haven't seen any yet. We're 2 seasons in. There's no nonsense at all. None
yeah,
of
it's
it.
just
It
normal.
doesn't exist. Yeah, it's just a normal show. It's crazy how fast these people were able to destroy that world. Just
Oh yeah.
destroy it. It's gone.
Oh yeah, and they did it with some gusto, but yeah, no, it was fine. It was another show, similar time called Lost Girl, which the
Yep.
premise it's such a dumbass premise, but the actors and the some of the core ideas were fun. It's a show about a succubus, and if you're
Mm,
going to do a show about a succubus, you kind of have only one choice. You know, do a show about a succubus. Yeah. And they kind of soft pedaled it the best they could. I mean, she was literally, how many minutes? It hasn't been long enough. Was having coitus with many, many people,
mm,
but they never showed anything, right? But the
right.
uh, the the things around it actually were actually fun. There was some good characters. A little midget guy that was really cool. Um, but yeah, it's similar show, similar time. You might like it. And like I said, I don't know. The premise is kind of dumb. If you're gonna do a succubus, do a succubus. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you can't PG-13 that shit.
No,
Yeah,
no,
but
it's
they
kind of
tried.
a waste of time, to be
Yeah, they
honest.
they tried. But most of it was her trying to find because she's lost. Trying to find out her history and it's the same. It's very similar to Grimm. That's why I mention it because they have their own hidden underworld that's exists alongside us, type of thing, right?
Mm,
Honestly, they missed a huge opportunity during that period. They should have done Hellboy, the
they should.
series, right?
Hellboy be a
Yeah,
fantastic series.
BBRD.
Uh,
Yeah, that would have been great
yeah,
because there's an
yeah.
entire world underneath everything there. Because you ever read those comics?
A little bit, not deeply, but a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I much prefer those
Um,
to Hellboy. I thought those were great.
I think a BPRD show would be phenomenal.
Hmm.
I think I always have liked the idea of like modern fantasy, right? I like it. It's why I think I like this Grimm show, even though it's a little chickish, but that's all right. Um,
Oh well.
it's it's got a lot of what I like in modern fantasy. The only problem I have with most takes on modern fantasy, and this show's not really an exception, unfortunately, is they're all afraid of magic. Like they'll have it kind of, it'll be real tongue in cheek or barely really mentioned, at least so
Yeah.
far. Or it'll just be potions. That's the magic, is always just like potions
Yeah.
or
Grim.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, and that's just that's just
Well,
cheap.
the
You're just
problem with
cheaping it out.
yeah, but it's not fear, it's incompetence.
Yeah,
Because when you put magic in, now you have a problem because you can solve any solution with it.
right.
So
Without
they're
limiting it. Yeah,
afraid to put themselves in a situation where they have to, like, okay, well, magic can do all this. Well, now I'm screwed. How do I tell my story? I don't know. Someone has a magical ward, or someone's better at
yeah.
magic, or
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
they
thing,
can't
right?
use their brain, right?
If you build a world where magic is very real,
Hmm.
well, then that means that the people there are used to this.
Yeah.
It's not a phenomenon to them. It's not just some new thing. So they have come up with ways of
Hmm.
deterring it and deferring it and deflecting it and dissolving it and doing all sorts of things because that's of course they have. They're
Right.
people. So of course they did. It, that's what and I agree with you. It's an incompetence. That's what I dislike, is the fact that they can't sit down and think of, okay, let's put magic in here, but we got to get rules and we got to stick to those
Right.
rules. And then we also have to come up with hard counters, things
Yeah.
like that. It's one of the
Exactly.
things that anime does way better
Oh yeah.
than any Western anything does, because
Well.
they set up systems and then they tell you the rules, and sometimes they'll play with them a bit, but by and large they stick to the basic premise of those rules, and that's a good thing. And I just
Sure.
wish more Western fantasy, at least on like television, actual shows, would stop being so afraid of making. And the reason they do it isn't just because they're incompetent on how to tell that story with magic in it. It's because they don't want there to be any rules.
That's
Because as soon as
true.
there's rules, they can't
Yeah.
just tell any damn story they want. They have to
Which is
limit themselves.
because they're incompetent.
Yes.
But no, I mean, it used to be, especially a TV series or anything that was intended to be a series, there used to be a Bible. They'd create a
Yeah.
Bible. They don't do this anymore, it seems. It's quite obviously don't. I mean, old Jar Jar Abrams went in there, and he's going to save the day. He's going to do the Star Wars because he did the Star Trek, but it really sucked because he clearly needs to be doing Star Wars. So I'm going to make him do because he's the golden boy. Steven Spielberg said, and they didn't have a frickin' Bible at all. They had no clue what the hell they were doing. All they knew is Ray is the perfect human ever created, ever.
That's right.
That's all they
At
had.
the best.
That's it, right?
That's right.
And it's unfortunate because you had a couple people who came in, younger actors who were like biting at the, chomping at the bit, like, hey, I'll do this, a la Finn, whatever
All their
that dude's name
virtue
is.
signaling
Completely
about
missed chance.
representation,
Hmm.
all their virtue signaling about how black voices don't get enough blah blah blah. And then the most charismatic and by far the best potential character arc in that trilogy was Finn, and they did nothing with him.
Yeah, no,
Nothing.
he was the most interesting character, and
Yeah.
and it's weird because it seems to be right up the alley of what they want. A
Yeah.
black dude, and
He
he
can
was very
and he
interesting. He
can
was
act.
compelling, and he can act.
Yeah, he's a good
Yeah,
actor.
he was great.
He's a little bit of an idiot outside of it,
Yeah,
but
he's
he's
a
an actor
bitch.
when he
He's a bitch. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's a good
But
actor.
they easily could have, especially if they had original. Let's give JJ the credit, even though it's probably giving him way too much. But let's pretend that he knew he was always going to make her a child of Palpatine, right? A clone
No,
or whatever she
that's
supposedly is.
that's
But
not true.
let's pretend he was. Finn is either an orphan or a clone of some description. So
Yeah,
you could have had, if he would have been the one to become the Master Jedi, and she would have turned, which is what I honestly thought. If
yeah.
there was
So did
anything
I.
going on, that's what was going on.
Yeah,
Uh, that would have
spoil
been a
little bitch,
fantastic
brat.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic story of
It
two
could have been.
orphans, potentially both two clones, and you get to see two different, takes on what happened to them. Basically, one falls to the dark, one goes from the dark to the light, and the other one goes the other way. Um, that
Yeah,
could have been very interesting,
he could have been a
but no.
cloned or somehow derivative of Mace Windu as well,
Oh my god, yeah, because of course they would.
because the Emperor had
If
his
think
hand.
about it. Exactly, even that, even not. You don't think he would have sent people out to find his body? He's one of the most powerful Jedi to ever exist. Period. Like
Yeah,
he's in the top 20. Easy. Mace Windu is.
Yeah.
Emperor would be interested in that. He'd be very interested in his blood and his metachlorians.
Especially the way
Very
they
interested.
went with the cloning, yeah.
Yeah.
But and of course, cloning's been part of the story since Lucas. So,
Yes.
but yeah, no, huge missed opportunity. But the point is, they didn't have a Bible. They just didn't
Yes.
have one. And this used to be a standard thing to do. Johann said, "World building, baby." You're 100% Johann, correct, Johann. And we are going to be getting into some stuff later, Johann. I'd actually be very interested in your opinion. Johann comes from a place that has mixed religious populations, right? And I'm kind of curious what he's going to think about the later conversations. I really want your opinion, Johan. So stick around. Actually, you can jump in here if you like, Johan.
Hmm.
But because we're going to be
I love
getting
that
into
name,
the Johan, yeah, it's a
Johann.
good name.
Good
Johann
name. Yeah.
Alexander, yeah,
Yeah.
quite a name.
Strong. That's
Yeah, it is
strong.
strong. Yeah. But anyway, yes, there are some good shows. We don't have them now. Although there's still little bright lights here. We haven't
Yeah.
watched episode 2 or 3. We will for the Continental. But
Yeah. Oh, I
we saw the
completely
first
forgot
one.
about that. I need to watch that.
Oh, dude,
Maybe
it
I'll do that
was
tonight.
pretty solid. It was
I
pretty
bet.
solid.
I,
It
I've yet to see him to fumble. To be honest, the people who make John Wick, and that's who's in charge of this.
you know,
I think he's producing it or whatever. I've yet to see him fumble.
well,
Everything he's ever made, I've at least enjoyed.
he did
Maybe it wasn't
fumble.
great, but I've enjoyed it.
He
Uh oh,
did.
what do you? In the
Well,
show, he fumbles.
no, no. I haven't not yet. But he did fumble in the movies. Because he decided that there needs to be consequences for John Wick's
Oh
action,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
why it's
Okay,
like
I'll give you that one. Yeah, yeah.
dumbass.
Right at the end, he
Yeah,
did. He
right at the
dropped the ball
very
right at
end.
the end.
Yeah, he
But I
dropped the ball.
think that was more Keanu, to be honest with you, because
Maybe.
Keanu was probably just freaking tired. Like that last movie had to be
Oh, beat the
an
hell out of him. Yeah.
absolute, oh man, just a gauntlet to film that. Yes, because they literally beat the hell out of him the whole movie. That's all it is. Just him getting the shit kicked out of him the whole movie.
You know what I would
Um,
have done though? I would have worked in some young man or a teenage boy
mm,
that was going through the system, and it was in the fourth movie, and in the end, Keanu walks off with the boy, his arm around the boy's shoulder, taking him off into the sunset, a
under his
la
wing.
training. Yeah, the new
Yeah.
Wick, John Wick Jr.
I
Or,
think, honestly, my solution to the John Wick problem is probably what they're going to end up doing. Because I'd be very surprised if we don't get another John Wick movie. The last
yeah,
one just made too much money, and they're not. It's not that they're against doing it. It's just I think they were tired. They wanted a break.
oh yeah,
Um,
Keanu must have been
so
black and
I
blue
wouldn't
after
be
that, dude.
surprised. Oh, he had to be beat up. I wouldn't be surprised if something like what I proposed, if you remember, basically he takes over as the elder, John does, because they don't, but just because they're afraid of him for no other reason. They don't want to keep fighting him. They're like, listen, we'll give you whatever you want, just stop. Um,
Yeah,
I
that
think
would
that's
have.
a pretty good ending, and then you can have exactly what you just said. So they set, so there's this troubled kid who they're trying to bring in and da 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 da, and for whatever reason John takes a liking to him and trains him himself, takes him under his wing.
Yeah, Wick
Um,
Jr. I can see the title
yeah,
already. Hmm.
yeah, why not?
I mean, it's tongue in
Why
cheek,
not?
man. Lean into it, dude. That's the thing. It was the such a blunder by that director. It's you're trying to add actual real life consequences to a movie where he's literally running around, dodging and blocking bullets with a freaking suit jacket, dude. Dude.
Well, and here's the funny thing is he forgot himself because in interviews he's talking about, well, this movie is supposed to be mythological. These aren't
Yeah,
supposed to be real
it's
people, really.
great.
I mean, it's
It's
told in a
fantasy.
modern setting and everything, but yeah, it's a fantasy. It's a modern myth. He's a literal urban
He is
like
a Baba
legend.
Yaga. And of course
Yeah.
they fucked that up from day one because Baba
Yep.
Yaga is a lady. It Baba, literally means
Hey,
grandmother.
listen. It's 2023. He can be whatever he wants, Chester. Don't be a bigot.
Yeah, okay, fine. It's true. He identifies as an old lady. I get it.
That's right. He
Yeah.
identifies as an old grandmother.
He kind of looks
That's
like an old lady sometimes, to be fair. To be fair. That's why he put that beard on. He needs it. He does need it. It's true. But you got to give John credit. I mean, you have to give Keanu credit because he he's not. We know he's not a good actor. We get it, and he knows it too. But he's
He knows
really
what he's
good
doing.
at selling action, though. He's good at that.
He's yeah, physical act,
He's a
physical charisma.
physical actor. He's really solid at
Yep,
it, and he knows, and he
he
leans
always has
into it.
been.
Yeah.
He always has been, all the way back to Speed, all the way back to Point
Mm.
Break back then.
No,
Those
sure.
movies. He's not putting on any kind of Oscar-worthy performance,
No.
but
And the ladies
he
like him.
brings it. But the right, he gets your attention. The ladies like him, and the men think he's cool, and that's it.
Oh yeah,
That's all you
it's
need.
perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. My wife gets all Twitter pated about the Keanu, just so you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
my wife doesn't has never been into Keanu for whatever.
She's a
Even though
bit
he's
younger.
definitely her type.
Yeah.
Uh she likes him tall, dark, and handsome, like everyone.
Yeah, but the
Um
sad thing is there's no woman that I get Twitter pated about though. It seems unfair.
it is on
Yeah.
is on. Well, especially since Hollywood has just decided as a block we're not allowed to see beautiful women anymore. Just not. They don't exist in Hollywood. Um, that's a problem. It's very rare when any of these ladies get into these movies, especially big ones, and I look at them, I'm like, wow, she is gorgeous.
Mhm.
Anymore, it just doesn't happen anymore. They're just not allowed. You usually get some kind of Zendaya looking creature, and they're supposed to
Yeah,
pretend
it
that
is
she's the
that
most beautiful thing you've
she's
ever
the
seen.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. We see that a lot. Yeah, and let me say this very clearly and loudly so the wife who's behind me can hear me.
Yep,
The simple fact of the matter is that when it comes down to it, men usually love their wives more than their wives love them.
accurate. I agree, and I think there's a
No, just
biological
completely
reason for
ignored.
that.
Just completely ignored.
Yeah,
Just
she heard you though. She
yeah.
heard you. There's a biological reason for that, and that is because we have a stronger drive to go out and find a mate. So if we actually say, "Okay, you're the one," we
Mhm.
actually mean it. We have to mean it, or
Yeah.
else our biology will just drive us insane. Uh, and some men it does still, and they go out and they do things they shouldn't.
Ooh, that's a
But
good idea.
women, on the other hand, don't have that urge like the way men do, and I think that's really all it is because we have these, this especially young men, these incredibly strong sex drives that it's literally all we think about.
Mm.
Um,
The little
when
drum in
we
the back,
decide,
little hammer in the back of the head, right?
oh, all the time, yeah, just you wake up, he's there. You go to sleep, he's there.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's ridiculous. You'll be just sitting there reading a textbook, and all of a sudden, boner. Like, what?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't ask for this, but there it is.
And ladies, just so
Um,
you know, it doesn't matter how old you get, the hammer's still going.
yeah, it's in there. It's
It
dinging.
is.
It might
The
not be as
body
loud, but it's
stops
still dinging.
stops responding. However,
That's hilarious.
but
My grandpa,
the hammer, dude.
one of his best lines that I ever heard my grandpa say, he said it to my uncle. He goes, I still look, but I don't know why.
Yeah, that's true. It is true. It is true. Let me go see or a
Mm.
cult that worship John Wick. That could have been interesting, Johan. Let me
Yeah,
go over here to the Discord real quick, and let me jump in here to Johan, just in case he's interested. Let me see here. He's not in this Discord, huh? Well,
uh,
you know what I can
thought he was.
do? I can go to the other Discord and I can forcibly move him over without his permission. hmm
Uh-oh.
hmm Yep, I'm doing it. Let's see here.
Violence. This is
I'm going
violent.
to invite you to this server. So that's fan speak, right? I have
Yeah.
invited you to the server, Johan. Join the server. It's a
Which
different
which
server on Discord.
we haven't called this show that in 2 years at least.
Well, we have our own thing, fair enough. But yeah, that's fine. But things evolve. Things evolve. Anyway, that was a nice segue into getting past the 15 minute mark, talking
Yeah,
about fantasy shows and movies. But honestly, we need to deal with the elephant in the room, and that is the Middle East.
it is an
Now,
elephant.
it is an elephant, that old chestnut, you know.
Yeah.
But he's having breakfast. He basically says, screw off, Chester. All right, fine, Johan. Be like that.
See
I
how it
wonder,
no, we see how it is. It's fine.
yeah, I wonder what he's eating. I'm always curious what people
Oh,
are eating. But no, this
it's in our blood,
situation in the
Chester.
Levant, in the Middle East in general, it's. I mean, are you exasperated yet? Are you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it tit for tat, and you get all these progressives. It's amazing how eager they are to support the Muslims. I don't get it, but whatever. I keep seeing you have these different groups, and it's like Palestine started, no, Israel started. That literally these arguments are happening on Twitter and online, and it's like, you know, um, you're not correct. I do love how we have all these experts on the Ukraine Russia are now automatically experts
That's
on
right.
Israeli Palestinian conflict. I'll give you one guess who started this shit. Would you like to guess?
Um, let's see. The Romans.
Yeah, sure. We can go back to that time, couldn't we? I mean, they're the ones that tore the temple down after all, right?
It's true.
To be
It's
fair,
all
but
true.
no, Britain started this shit.
Yeah. Well, the Romans, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Rome
fair.
too.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Modern Rome, yeah, fair.
Yeah.
But the British started this, guys. This is
Yes.
yeah, I mean, think about what happened. We have the war, right?
Right.
Afterward, you get all of these. Of course, we English speakers call them Jews. We'll get into that in a minute. And we said, wait, it was horrible what happened to you. We've been having conversations secretly in the shadows of this group called Zionists. Oh no, yeah, horrible things happened to you. And we're going to you're going to put you back in your homeland. Big air
Yes. Wait,
quotes. Can you see
wait a
my
minute.
hands up, my shoulders shrugging? And they threw them down there. They're the ones that displaced the Palestinians. They're the ones that pushed them out. They should have done it 100%. If you're going to do something, do it, right?
Yeah, no half
I mean,
measures.
I mean, no half measures. And then took because sure, the upper echelon are Zionists, right? But
Yep.
the majority of these are just poor European Khazar Jews, right?
That's right.
And they just threw them in there. And of course, you don't think the Palestinians are going to get pissed off about this? Of course they are. You just
Yeah.
took their home, and they start making trouble, and it's been what, war ever since.
Yep.
So don't. It's not the Palestinians' fault. It's not those poor Jews that got thrown down into Israel. It's not their fault either. It's frickin' British fault and the Americans lapping at their heels. That's
Yep.
whose fault this is. Okay. So therefore, now that blame has been given,
That's right.
we need to fix the situation because there's no way you
I'm
can.
always fine with blaming the Brits.
Oh
They
well, it's
are
because
history's villain.
they are, dude. They're horrible. I mean, just look at historically the shit they've done. They're
And
horrible, dude.
I'm gonna say, I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm serious. I think it's because their food is disgusting. Because so much of their expansion was so they could find better things to eat.
Maybe this but
I'm
potential is
just
that. Yeah, that's
just
possible.
saying. I'm
That's
just saying.
possible.
Armies march on their stomach.
Mhm.
Conquerors conquer because they're hungry. I'm
Mhm.
just saying.
Mhm. It's a theory.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
theory. Listen, there's a reason everybody always conquered Egypt.
Right.
Egypt can make a lot of food.
That's
They
true.
got the Nile Valley.
It's
They
like
grow
it,
the food.
and
You're good.
you don't even have to irrigate it. It just irrigates itself.
It does all by itself.
I
It's
mean,
like it was planned that way.
yeah, almost
Oops.
like God gave you a
Whoopsie.
gift. Whoopsie. But no, of course that you're very correct. And the Indus Valley is another example.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what do we got? We got this situation where you got now keep in mind the Muslims never call them Jews. No one calls them Hebrews.
Which is odd.
Nobody, not even themselves, because they're not, right? Although the Zionists have a connection to it. But
Yeah.
what are all the Muslims who say death to Israel? They call them Zionists,
That's
right?
right.
They never refer to them as kill the Jew. It's kill the Zionist. I understand that you don't speak their languages, but that's what they're saying. They're not saying kill the Jew. They're not saying get the Hebrew. That's not what they're saying. They're saying kill the Zionist or death to Israel. And keep in mind, the people in Israel, they don't call themselves Hebrews either. Matter of fact, they don't even call themselves Jews. They call themselves Israelis.
That's right.
Right. So I mean,
I
just
find
understand the
interesting
terminology going on here. But
if
nevertheless,
you're if you're claimed that land as they claim it is, it's
Well,
thousands
the
and thousands of
British
years
claimed.
old,
Yeah.
da 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 da, right? They because of the Bible and all this stuff. Yet they don't call themselves Israelites like the Bible does. They don't call themselves Hebrews like the Bible does. They've come up with a new identity,
Yeah.
which I find fascinating. Why
Right.
do that? If you're
Israel,
trying to legitimize
Israeli.
yourself, yeah, why wouldn't you just use
Because
the
they
old
know it's
thing?
bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, aside from the political nonsense, and we understand political nonsense, no matter where you are, is political nonsense. These people,
Yes.
these leaders all around the world, whether they're a mouthpiece or not, there's someone behind the country or the culture who's smart enough to understand exactly what's going on. And keep in mind that the leaders of Islam are well aware of who and where these Khazars come from. They know this, but
Hmm.
they've happily embraced it for political reasons, I'm assuming. You always got to have an enemy, I guess. But beyond all of that nonsense, let's take all that nonsense and just look at the people. We have these Israelis, and for the most part, they're just people, right? And you have the Palestinians, and for the most part, they're just people whose land was invaded and taken. So you have a problem, and then you have these insurgency groups amongst all throughout them that are constantly causing trouble and violence and death. And don't think that these Israelis are not blameless, because there's groups amongst them that are fanatical and dangerous, right? And
Yep.
it's shocking to me how many Christians like automatically support these people, which is weird because they are not the biblical Hebrews. They are
Correct.
not, but yet the Christians automatically, especially American Christians, but all Christians really, just glom on and support these people, even though they hate you, right?
Well, I would say I put the caveat that most do, and that's a fairly recent phenomenon for especially the numbers that do.
Yeah.
There was a
Well,
time when European Christians, especially, were very antagonistic to these people for many
for a
different
long
generations,
time. Yeah, yeah,
including
yeah. That's true.
including the Romans, very
Yeah.
antagonistic to these
It
people.
is a new
So
phenomenon. You're right. You're right. Because
yeah,
you got to
and
keep
there's
in
a
mind.
reason for it.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's purposeful. They were infiltrated. I know for a fact that this happens, that the Zionists send out agents, I guess you want to call them,
Hmm.
and they tell the, independent church member or independent church leaders, basically they'll help them out, quote unquote, if they don't have to necessarily preach anything that's unbiblical, but they really harp on Jews chosen people, Jews deserve Israel, that's their land. Like they really make that a big part of their doctrine.
Sure.
Um, and that is where that comes from. So people hear this all. I know for a fact. I grew up in church. They hear it all the time.
Yeah.
It's almost every sermon. Now,
Yeah.
fairness to my pastor, he told them to be, kick rocks. He said, "Listen, we preach the Bible here. That's it. Get out of here. I don't
Right.
want to. I don't care who you are, or who you represent." He did the same to government agents when they came and tried to do. I can't remember what the name of the program is, but you can find it. That basically, whenever there's an emergency, quote unquote, that he would make sure he uses his pulpit correctly. In other words, do what the government tells you. And
Hmm.
he told them to kick rocks too.
Right.
Um, but my point is, that's why these churches were, especially the big independent ones and the big corporate ones, obviously, were infiltrated, and they were from the
Clearly.
top down betrayed, and the people, the sheep, as they're called, quite literally, don't realize that the shepherd is leading them astray,
I should do a
and that's a
TFT
bummer.
about the Zionist dude. I should.
We should, we
Yeah.
should, because they're real. They're a
They
real
are,
deal.
and they're not what you think they are. But
No,
and it's not even a conspiracy theory, really. It's
no,
just it is what it is.
it's
But
pretty open.
but here's the thing you have to understand. Now, there's plenty. The one thing you have to give credit to the Christians is this: in their book, aside from the Old Testament, but the Christian will tell you the Old Testament is literally the Old Testament. We live by the New Testament. They do. It's
That's right.
true. And the one thing you got to give credit to the Christians, their book very clearly says there is no group of people you should hate. Matter of fact, you should turn the other cheek and love thy neighbor.
That's right.
You got to give them credit, because the
Yes.
the Jewish religion is not like that. It says very clearly that if you are not of them, then you should be killed. Honestly, the
Yep.
Jewish books state that Christians should be killed. Just understand
Correct.
that. And if you go read their extended books beyond the Torah, they have a lot of books, just like the Muslim hadiths, right?
Yep.
They hate Jesus. They hate
Yeah.
Jesus, dude, big time. He's a traitor, right? So now the average Jew is probably a nice person and doesn't care anything about that because the Jews have been secularized, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't play out unless you come into serious Orthodox Jews, and they can be quite dangerous. Keep in mind, in Jerusalem, Christians are constantly being abused by Muslims and Jews.
Just happened.
Yeah, it
Just a
happens
few
all the
days
time,
ago,
dude. Yeah.
some Chinese Christians I think they were from China, Asian. They looked Chinese. They had just come there, on pilgrimage basically, and they were reenacting the Passion of the Christ as
Hmm.
they do over there. And some heavily Orthodox Jewish children and men were walking by and spitting on them,
Yep.
just spitting on them.
Yeah.
Like what?
I mean,
Well, they're not
so
hurt. They were hurting absolutely nobody. They were just
yeah,
carrying a nice little wooden cross, doing their deal. Just a little ritual. I've been a part of that over in Israel. It's actually pretty cool.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, they just walked by and just
yeah.
spit on them.
But just so we understand this is real. Now,
Yeah.
also we have to understand the state of life in the Levant. It
Mm,
is, a constant state of death around any corner, and it doesn't matter what group you're part of. If you live in that area, death is always looming, right? Always.
yeah.
So this is all true. So therefore, what do we do? Because once, as we all saw, once again, the Palestinians are sending thousands and thousands of rockets, which we won't even talk about how the hell they got that. I see so many of these talking heads on the news saying, well, they built them. Oh, really? Did they?
In our hovels.
Thousands of them in their little hovels that is completely isolated and locked down because they're violent and dangerous. I mean, because in
Yeah.
the end, what do you expect the Israelis to do? I mean, really. But anyway, you
Yeah.
got thousands and thousands of rockets coming over. Now, the Iron Dome, for the most part, knocked almost all of them out of the air. Very few of them hit, so that worked. But for some reason, now they're saying upwards of 1,000 Hamas soldiers came into and are still knocking about, murdering anybody they can get their hands on. Now, how that's the question. And you mentioned this earlier, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah. How? How
How?
in the hell
How?
did Mossad and the IDF get caught with their pants down that hard,
Yeah, it's bullshit.
that bad?
It's bullshit.
That's obscene that they're expecting, and so far everybody seems to be just swallowing this pill as that if
Well, we
that's
were
that's
paying
not even
attention
possible.
elsewhere,
What?
they
So
said.
what?
Yeah. Now, there's a documentary from a long time ago. It came out, was it 60 minutes? I think it was 60 minutes. And it was long, and
Yeah.
I was a kid, so it's old. And I'm sure you can find more modern iterations of it. But you have to understand the surveillance system that Israel has. They have
Yeah.
not only satellites, but cameras and people that watch
That's right.
every inch of that border,
Yep.
the Gaza borders, their Jordanian borders. Although they're probably a little more lax there, to be honest with you. The Iranian borders, the Iraqi borders, and most certainly the Lebanese borders. They watch every freaking inch of that, every inch. There's no
Yep.
way that government didn't know that this was happening. It's
Yeah. How
impossible.
does thousands of armed men
Well, I don't know if it's
get
that
grouped up
many,
enough?
but
Well, they say it's over 1,000, I guess now. So, well, okay, 1,000. Let's even say 500. How do 500 men, armed men, warriors, get grouped up enough on your border that you are surveilling at all times to sneak one past the
right.
goalie and get into
And
your?
right,
How does
and
that happen?
yeah, and how does that happen? And keep in mind, they captured a total of one tank, one
Yes,
truck, and one Humvee,
that's right.
precisely. And keep in mind, the initial number is 100 Hamas soldiers, and it keeps growing.
Right.
Um, and they're still knocking about. So, um, yeah, it's extremely questionable. And I'm kind of wondering if this isn't a little bit of a, Hamas did what they did, but I wonder if Israel's not pulling a little bit of a red flag here. They haven't
Mm,
been getting enough tension. They're sick of it. They want to just wipe out the Palestinians or whatever the situation is. But
yeah.
however you look at it, I understand the Palestinian plight. I do. I
Yeah.
understand the Israeli plight. I do. What are they going
Yeah.
to do? You can't, because every time they defend themselves, people are screaming, "Oh, Israel is so evil." Well, they're getting murdered constantly. What
Yeah.
do you expect
Bombed.
them to do?
Yeah.
Right? So here's my point. My point is, I get
Yep.
it. I understand what's going on, and I'm not putting any blame on anybody. But it needs to be solved. So how do you solve
Yes.
this? Well, there's only really one solution. There's just one solution. You either remove all the Israelis or you
Yep.
remove all the Palestinians.
Yep.
I mean,
Because
it's
it's not going to
very
stop.
simple. It's not going to stop.
Not going to stop.
Keep in
And the
mind,
Arabs around Israel aren't going to just let it go if they genocide the Palestinians. That's not reality. They're not just going to be, oh well, they had it coming. That's
well,
not what's going to happen.
let's be fair for a second, though. Let's say we moved all these Israelis back to Europe, right?
Hmm.
Let's see. Where's a place that has free real estate? Oh, Ukraine. Let's go ahead and put them in there. Um, uh, I'm sure Zelensky would love that. You notice
Stirring
how
that pot.
well you notice how he came out immediately and put his face out there. Hey, 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 we're still here. My wife laughed at
No,
that too.
you're done. You're done
I
there,
think you're done, buddy,
Zelensky.
because things
You're
are about to
sending
get
women to the
serious.
front line.
Yeah,
You're done.
yeah.
You're done.
But
Uh,
so we could do that. But if you did that, how long you think it would take for the rest of the Muslims to murder all the Palestinians and take that land?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean
That's
honestly.
exactly. Saudi Arabia would be in there is next day probably. They'd be on it.
Hmm.
Uh, or one of the others that literally constantly keep their border militarized with Israel.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
would
no,
it
it
would be
the best
disaster.
part about it is you said it. So you have the same people who, well, not all of them, but a lot of them who support Israel right now, right? They're pro-Israel. Um, but then when you talk about the Americas colonization and the colonization of other places, well, that's different. But it's literally the exact same conundrum that the forefathers of America ran into, that the colonists over here, the settlers over here ran into.
Hmm.
They were here. They weren't going to leave because many of them, in fact, eventually nearly all of them were born here. So what are they supposed to do? These Indians, these tribals keep attacking them, keep killing their, doing this, that, or another thing. It's the exact same problem
Yeah,
of you're in a no-win situation when it comes to not killing people.
sure.
Basically, somebody's got to go. It's just that simple. There's only so much space, and
Well, especially
I don't
there,
like it.
especially there.
Oh yeah,
Keep
I
in
don't
mind,
like it any more than anyone else. But
yeah.
what else you gonna do?
Well, Gaza is a very small space. There's
Yep,
over 2 million people there. It's the most densely populated place on Earth.
yep,
End of
oh,
conversation. So
yep,
between that and the West Bank, you got what, maybe 4 million, 4.5 million. I don't know the exact number, but it's probably around that. Um, there are plenty of places on Earth we could put them,
yeah,
right? Because it's not a perfect solution. The Muslims, or the Islamists anyway, are going to still be screaming for the death of the Zionists and the death of the death to Israel. It's not going to change, but at least they would have extremely secure borders. And you would have the lack of this nonsense. Jerusalem's an issue, but keep in mind Jerusalem is not part of Israel. I don't know if you guys understand that. That is under the monitoring and peaceful eyes of the Jordanians.
mm,
And this is something that Israel gave up back in the Yom Kippur War, right?
mm,
Which I don't think they should have, but they did. But anyway, mistakes have been made over the years, plenty of
yep,
mistakes. But I'm just saying, I don't know, what do we do? Because this is an issue that the world needs to deal with, because the world, a la the United Nations, made this. They
yeah,
created it. Sure, Britain was the one leading the charge, but all those UN were like, "Oh yeah, it's just a great idea," right? And they created it. The literal
yep,
nations of the world, created this situation. Therefore, they need to fix it, right?
yeah,
So we just something needs to be done, because this is ridiculous. Whether the Israelis were having a siesta day or not. The fact that you have 1,000
Yes.
plus Hamas goat herders with guns running around, murdering anybody they can get a hold of, and taking a few back because they want to have human shields. But this
Mhm.
is not acceptable. It's not acceptable, dude. And to give you a very and some because I'm sure some people will call me racist. But here's the thing. You can go find a video yesterday of the Israeli soldiers gathered together before entering into Gaza, and they're singing a song. It's quite a somber
Oh.
song, and that song saying is "God fill our hearts with hope." Because it's translated, but God fill our hearts with hope, and that of our enemy as well, so that this conflict will be done and shortly and quick. God fill our hearts with hope. That's a
Mhm.
nice sentiment for an army, a soldier to be singing. And and then on the other side, you have these Palestinians and their limited vocabulary, um, dragging beaten and bloodied women and throwing them around, spitting in them, and murdering them as they say, "Allahu Akbar! Allah
Mhm.
be praised." How amazing! God gave you the power to beat and murder this little woman. You are so brave,
Yeah.
sir. A warrior of God indeed. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
juxtapose the situation because all the vocabulary you hear coming out of these frickin' Hamas and Hezbollah and all these other jackass groups is Allahu Akbar, death
Mhm.
to the Zionists or death to Israel, and humanity is on our side. Let's deal with the last one, shall we? Humanity is on our side. They keep saying it. And it's like,
Mm.
now I'm curious because these are not intelligent people. I mean, they're not. And
No.
that's partially Israel's fault because they don't know what to do and they just shut them in there, wall them up, literally. Because what do we got to do? They keep killing us, wall them up, right? But education would probably be a smart way to go, but because they're not
It
smart.
would help.
But I truly believe, and I'm about to say something. I'm sure this will probably piss YouTube off more than anything. Um, you have a lot of these progressives that, of course, are with Palestine, right? And like I said, I can see
Yep.
both sides of the situation, to be fair. But they're with Palestine, and they don't care the atrocities that they commit. But humanity is with us. I'm kind of wondering if all of these delusional children who run around and say Palestine and Israel evil, these progressive we have to deal with. They're children, they're delusional children. If they listened to that and thought that that's the world, and they got in their ear
Mhm.
because they come over there and they bring their money and their funding and they support them and they have their little rallies like Mark Ruffalo, go over and we got to support the Palestinians, right? Although you have to, but I'll get to that in a second. Um, so did they really believe that? Because of course, the majority of the world thinks it's disgusting.
Yep.
Humanity is not with you, brother. They are not with you. But you also have to understand another thing. Hamas has been in charge there for what, 16, 17, 18 years, something, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, something like that. It's nearly 20 years. Hamas has been in charge. What do you think it's like to be under the tutelage of Hamas?
Oh, I'm sure it's just splendid.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tyrannical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. They are not good people. The people in Palestine are not happy. I'm sure they hate the Jews because who else do you hate? Because the people who oppress them the most are Hamas.
That's right.
That's the reality, right? Just
People
like the
who
Taliban.
people who hate Muslims, right, or hate Islam as a religion, or even Muslims themselves, should be very pro Islamism because there is no force on earth that's killed more Muslims than Islam.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here's our situation. Of course, Israel's going to go in there and they're going to try to be surgical. And they're going to take out this building or that. They're going to be as soft as they can. We don't want to hurt the civilians. When in reality, if we took a proper Roman mentality, the Romans years ago would have leveled that place.
Oh yeah. 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 It wouldn't have been pretty.
No,
It would have
they would have
been
literally salted the earth.
yes. The Romans, listen, they were reasonable until they weren't. If you would just kneel, most of the time they were reasonable with you. Maybe they'd only take 10%, decimate you. If you wouldn't and you continued to be a problem, they will destroy your temple and scatter your people to the winds.
Oh yeah,
Hi, hi, Jews. How you doing?
yeah,
Remember
they did.
that?
They did do
Yeah,
that to the Hebrews. Yeah, that's true.
yeah. So
Old
the
Vespasian there.
Romans, yeah, the Romans understood that to conquer a people, you have to break people. If they will not surrender, they will not submit to your cultural dominance or your political dominance or your military dominance, then you must destroy them. It's not a question
Yeah,
of if or what you want to do. It's
it's
not even something that you
well,
should
no,
take pleasure in.
it's the just thing to do from their point of
It's
view.
the correct thing to do because all you're doing by being tolerant of their existence in this situation is future versions of yourselves down the line are going to have more and more problems.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
basically investing in a future you don't want by not correcting the problem today.
right. And
And that's where we're at and have been for what 80 years now with the Israel situation. Um,
well, yeah, 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 since at least 60. But it was all starting after World War II and stuff, of course. But
yep.
we need to do something about it. Now, normally, you can bring up the point of sovereignty, right? Whereas,
Hmm.
well, what business does the international community have in this country's, decisions? I understand that argument, but there is no sovereign state in the Levant. There is not,
Correct.
right? So, and like I said, the British with the Americans at their heels and all the other countries were the ones that made this happen. They did this. Therefore, they need to fix it.
Yep.
So I just don't know what we do, because you just cannot allow this can't be going on anymore. Because keep in mind, a lot of those kids, because the real death toll, well, we're getting more as we speak. They're still killing whatever they can, but the initial death toll, which a bunch of dumbass kids down in South Israel, down in excuse me, near the border of Gaza, but they were in Israel, having a big old desert concert party, some, I'm sure it was degenerate and nonsense, because look at some of the photos they see coming out. It's kind of ridiculous, but they're having
Yep.
a big old party over there, and a lot of that initial discount is coming out of those. The thing is, a lot of those kids were not Israeli. A
That's
lot
right.
of Germans died. There were a whole bunch of kids from all over the world that were at that big party. I don't know what it was. I'm assuming it'll get some more attention here soon. But a lot of them were foreigners, right?
Yep.
And so, and of course, Israel is particularly inside of Jerusalem. It's packed full of tourists.
All the time.
Huge tourist attraction. Huge, right?
Hmm.
And you have to make that safe. You can't have that. I mean, you saw some of those videos, right?
Of course. Um, yeah, I saw both ways too. I saw also there's videos of IDF soldiers stripping captured Hamas fighters, whatever they're called,
Mhm.
and pissing on them, pissing on their corpses and
Sure.
stuff like that. Like
But I've
there,
also
there
seen
it's it's war. It's
it is
ugly.
war.
It's grotesque. And
All
now the world's starting to see what happens when the hegemon is too weak to enforce
yeah,
civility.
that's right.
And that's where we're
Um,
at.
and
We're
and
at that point.
and look how quickly we shifted, because Trump was actually doing a pretty good job with Middle Eastern peace. He had
He was.
successes that no one had had
He did.
before, and now here we are, just 2.5 years in, almost three, I guess. And look at how things have degraded, by design, of course.
Yes.
But I've also, just to be fair, I've also seen Israeli soldiers protecting some of these Hamas terrorists from
Yep.
getting lynched from Israelis, though. I have seen these
Of course.
videos. So it's a little of both. But it is war. They're angry. They're frustrated because I mean, like I said, what do you do? What do you expect the Israelis to do? And in the same way, what do you expect the Palestinians to do?
Yeah, no,
This is a
it's
catch
a lose
22, dude.
situation.
Yeah.
There's no win. Let's say the radical parts of the Israeli people, and they exist, that
Oh
want to
yeah.
genocide
They
people.
exist. Yeah.
Um, let's say they get their way. All right, they do a full genocide. They wipe them out. They go Roman on them, wipe them out, take them down to basically nothing, scatter the rest of them to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Do you really think their Muslim and Arab brothers, which outnumber the Jews by a lot, are just going to be cool with that? They're not. There's not going to be problems down the line with this action. Of course there is.
Yeah,
So that Israel absolutely could do that. They're strong enough to do it. There's the only thing stopping them from doing it is that fear of backlash and things of this nature.
I guess we'll have
Um,
to go back to blanket bombing.
yes. And then the other alternative, if some for some reason the Israelis were like, you know what, we give up. We're done. We're tired of this. We're going back to Europe. We're going back to Switzerland. We're going back to America. We're going back to all these places we came from, and we're just gonna pretend that we're just gonna pull out. They did that. Well, that's not a good situation either,
Oh,
because
the
for one,
Levant will get
a lo-
worse. Yeah,
it will get worse. Not all of the Jews are going to be able to leave. They're just going to be tortured and terrorized,
oh yeah,
and it'll just not be a good situation for anybody involved there. That's just again a normal person. There's a lot of normal people there. I've been there. There's a lot of really good people there, and they're going to suffer because of this whole situation that was forced
yeah,
upon them. Most of them, or I don't know about most of them, but a lot of them were born there. They were
oh
literally
yeah,
born into
oh a
it,
whole bunch of them. Yeah,
and so what are they supposed to do? Like that's the problem. Nobody has an answer. And because nobody wants to say somebody's got to go and actually mean it, say it with their chest and on the national, the international stage. And I'm not talking about genocide. I mean displacement.
yeah,
Nobody wants
displacement.
to do that. Then we're just going to keep having this
Yeah,
problem because
yeah, it's
no peaceful
ridiculous.
solution.
Yeah,
There just
and
isn't. It's
there isn't, and keep in mind, I mean, yeah, of course, I know you guys know this stuff, but the situation going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians is a long thing, and I get both sides. I mean, neither side has got there's not much choice in the situation, but understand this particular attack. Why? What caused it to happen? This particular one. Now, there's a lot of nonsense coming out of the Hamas leaders right now, and the shit they're saying. It's complete bullshit politics, and they're not up to the savvy of the modern liar.
mm,
It's very old school and it's very transparent. But the real reason they did this is because of the Alaska Mosque. Is that how you pronounce it?
Al Askra.
Mosque. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because the Jews, the Israelis, have been working on restarting the rebuilding of the Temple of Solomon.
Yep.
Now, which brings us into the Zionists, because these guys for a couple hundred years, right? It's a couple hundred years. They have been doing everything they can to bring forth the prophecy, Jewish prophecy, Hebrew prophecy, right? And they've succeeded in many things. The A big one was 6 million Jews dead by fire, and that they kept pushing that one from the 1870s. It was there were Jews are being killed here, and then of course we had the Bohemian uprising, or no, not Bohemian. Bolshevik uprising
Yep.
in Russia, and of course now there's 6 million Jews dying over there, and they kept trying to find a place where they could kills, at least in the tabloids, kill 6 million Jews, right? And
Yeah.
eventually World War II took place, and 6 million dead Jews. We've been working on this for quite a while, and they got their 6 million dead Jews. Now I'm not saying Jews didn't die because they certainly did, but
Oh yeah.
that number is a prophetic number, right?
Yeah.
And they've
The
been
devil's number.
it is what they've been working on, and of course they've had success because they were at least on paper they've been able to have all of these prophecies that need to come in line happen except one, and that's the rebuilding of Solomon's temple,
That's right.
the third temple, and they've begun it. And the thing is, the Islamists are well aware of these prophecies because I know people are going to get pissed, but Muslims are Christians.
Yeah.
It's just what the people in the Middle East called themselves as Christians. It is a very recent thing. The Umayyads are the ones who really made this kind of started toward nonsense that we have today. But it's a very recent thing that the Muslims consider themselves to be different from Christians, right?
Right.
And it was the Umayyads that wanted to tax everyone because they didn't give a shit. The Umayyads didn't care about religion.
No,
Matter of fact, what
it
they
was an
did,
empire.
yeah, it was an empire. They're very similar to what Constantine did. Matter of fact, they
Yeah,
seem to have taken a feather right out of his cap, right?
yeah. Very
Um,
smart
but
concept you did.
it,
Yeah,
it it worked. It did work.
yeah,
But it brings us to this modern time that we see them as different when their inception is not. They're literally just Christians, but now they've
yeah.
become something different. But because they are what they are, they are well aware of all these prophecies because you know what? They have them themselves.
That's right. All of them. It's
Yes.
interesting how many of them, especially the end times prophecies, Muslims pretty much believe everything is Christian, like your traditional, even Protestant or Catholic version of the end of the world, the apocalypse, the Revelation. Theirs is not any really any different. Jesus comes back, leads an army, conquers Shaitan, they call him Shaitan, which is Satan, and the Antichrist.
Oh, it's the
They believe
same
Jesus
because
is
they
the
are
Christ.
Christian.
It's the
Yeah.
same. It's the same exact narrative. The only
Yeah.
difference they make is they don't think Jesus is God. That's it. They
No,
think only Allah is God.
that's right.
And even I think even the virgin birth is in there. I think the whole
Oh yeah, no,
it's the
it's
same deal.
exactly the same. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And yet you get these archaeologists and anthropologists who are still quandering and curious. Why do we find so many Muslim artifacts in Russia? And it's like,
'Cause
oh,
they were
you
friendly. That's
fucking
why.
dumbasses. I mean, the Byzantine Empire came up, actually, it was kind of the fall of the Khazars. Interesting. It's connected to what
Yeah.
we're talking about. But the Byzantines came up, and of course, that was the very first Greek empire in human history. A lot of people
Right.
seem to think ancient Greece was an empire. They don't understand it wasn't. It was just a trade league, but a very powerful one. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they were being backed by the frickin' Phoenicians. So you know what do you got to do? But but anyway, the Byzantine Empire, the Greek Empire, they created a lot of things. They created the Russian language. They unified everything beyond the Black Sea, right?
Yep.
And of course, eventually this became what we call the Ottomans, but it's still the same people. It's the same thing. It's got a lot of Greek influence in language and thinking. It has, of course, Russia is directly connected to the Byzantine Empire. It is created from it, right?
Yep.
I don't want to get into the history; it's very long, but I'm just saying that this was a unified thing. And the Umayyads, 1,000 years ago, are the ones who really took advantage of the situation. And it wasn't until very recently that we saw this split. And keep in mind, as soon as the Ottoman rule, the Byzantine rule ended, right, with the, back,
Mhm.
World War One with Ataturk and all that kind of stuff, is
Yep.
when we saw the various disparate Islamic states start to fall into stupidity, right?
Yep.
It was at that point. Initially, they went very secular, all the way up into the 60s, 70s. They were, I mean,
Yep.
if you went to the early 70s, you went to Baghdad or you went to in these places, it looked just like America or London, or
Yep.
they looked just like us. And then
Yep.
you had this hardcore Islamist turn, which is not where what they were. It's not what they're coming from. It's a new thing. This is not traditional. It's not orthodox. This is new. And of course, look where we are now. The Middle East, how quickly has been thrown into third world. It wasn't just in the 70s. In my lifetime, it was not
Yep.
third world. It was first world. But look at it now,
And very wealthy.
and very
Very
wealthy.
wealthy.
Yeah, but look at it
There
now.
was a time, even fairly recently, where Syria, speaking of the Middle East, was considered basically an intellectual powerhouse of the world,
Oh
country,
yeah. Well,
especially in ancient
Baghdad,
times and
dude.
all sorts.
Shit.
Yeah,
Baghdad's
all
serious.
this stuff that's happened because of the Islamification. It's just theocratic fascism. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's
We can
just
pretend it
tyranny.
isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. It is theocratic fascism. And it always, when you centralize authority to that extent, and then there's always a different reason to do it. They've decided it's Islam. Um, you stifle things. You choke out innovation. You
Mhm.
choke out wealth. You stifle the creative mind. Too much order suppresses the chaos, and then without the chaos, you don't have creativity. You don't have innovation. Everything stagnates. You don't have people who want to take as many chances. because why? Why bother if these people are this corrupt and or whatever or too powerful and they're just going to come crush me anyway?
Well, ruling
Um,
by the sword has its quirks and its
there's
problems
a
on that. Yeah.
time to do it, right?
Mhm.
And then there's a time when you have to put it away.
Well,
And I think I was going to say this earlier, and I think I can answer why Trump was so much better at solving a lot of these problems without putting boots on the ground. He did do a lot of drone striking, but I think that was a deterrent. He was using that to try and appease the war party in America so we didn't have to put soldiers in. But I think it's very simple. It's the old axiom: if you want peace, prepare for war. He made
oh
sure
yeah,
everybody knew that that's what he was doing. He
oh
was
yeah,
building our military, strengthening our military, putting huge budgets in our military. He was literally telling world leaders, "If you don't act right, I'm going to nuke you." Like he was just out here telling them, just laying it, slapping the dick on the table. Like, listen, that's enough. It's time to listen now.
yeah.
And they
No,
respected it.
it's
A lot of them
shocking
respected it.
how good his international policy was. I didn't expect it,
Yeah,
dude. I did not. But he was
he's the
really
best
good at
foreign policy
international foreign
president of my
policy stuff.
lifetime.
Yeah, he was
And
amazing. I do have a question for Grimlock, though. He showed up, so I want to
uh-oh,
ask him a question. You're muted, by the way, Grimlock. Hello, how are you? Still muted.
he said, "Yeah, he's gone. You scared him away. You scared him
Still
away, Chester."
muted. I was about to go. Oh, there he is. I was about to give a baton. Hello, Grimlock. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. So I got a question for you, dude. We're talking
Uh-oh.
about the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and then the
I see.
dissolution of the Ottoman Empire and the redrawing of borders. Would you like to guess who did that
The redrawing of borders.
after World War One? Yeah. Would you like to guess who did that? Didn't care about cultural differences. Just this looks like a good shape. Would you like to guess who did that?
I'm gonna guess the Jews.
No. Why? Why? What the Jews were nothing at that time.
That's true.
They
Well,
didn't
usually
Very
exist.
whenever some fuckery goes on, there's a Stein or
Yeah,
somewhere in the mix.
but no, the correct answer is Britain.
It was white people again.
Yeah, yeah. The
Well,
correct
Yep, them
answer is Britain.
Anglos.
you
Yeah, it's just Anglos. Yeah.
Them damn Anglos were
But
well,
involved.
yeah. Now keep in mind the modern Middle East borders you see were drawn, literally drawn, because the Ottoman Empire was literally the Ottoman Empire. Those
Yep,
borders you have today were written by Britain.
so
Britain literally drew on a map saying this is the border, and they didn't give a shit about any cultural overlap. They didn't pay attention to anything. They were like, "Oh, this is good," and that has brought us to the problem we have today. You wonder why so many Muslims are murdering each other is because they've been thrown into countries with each other where they should not have been, and they're being
that's right.
forced under one rule, and they don't like it.
yeah,
It's kind of like what
that
happened in Europe, about 500, 600 years ago or so, when all these different sects of Christianity decided to live together. It didn't end well.
No,
It ended very, very well. It actually
right?
ended okay because America was formed, but for a while it didn't go very well. There
No,
was
that's
a
true.
lot of killing, a lot of
It
killing.
was bloody. But now keep in mind the Ottomans, they were able to keep they were the Great Caliphate, right? They were
Yep.
able to keep everything in line because of the way they did stuff. They were very clear. Yeah, did you make trouble? Go murder that village.
Yep.
That's how the Ottomans dealt with it, and everyone
Which
knew
is
very well.
why,
Don't fuck up.
which is why, when Thomas Jefferson was president and he studied how the Ottoman Empire brought these people to heel, he told the Marines to do the exact same thing: destroy the entire village,
Yeah,
all of them, because it's the only way to do it. You have to take them out. If you do half measures, you're going to get horrible results later on.
yeah.
And that is what works, and that's what we did in our first true international war as or cross transatlantic war as a country is the war against the Barbary States with
People
with
forget about
Sweden as
that
our
one,
ally.
huh?
Yeah. And what Thomas Jefferson did. See, Thomas Jefferson had the foresight as a young ambassador to Britain to understand that these guys were a problem. They're going to keep being a problem. So he asked the ambassador from the Ottoman Empire while he was in London, basically just asked him some questions. He then taught himself Arabic, read the Quran and the Hadiths, and studied the Ottoman Empire
Yeah.
directly from
He was
Arabic
slightly
historians.
smart guy.
So when he was a smart guy, so when
Yeah.
it was time to
Slightly.
deal with the problem, he knew what to do,
Yeah.
and he did it.
Yeah. I mean, but and it's amazing how many people forget this part of our history. But from the
Yep.
halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, do you know where these
Yep.
places are?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
We, s-
Tripoli is over there in North Africa, and
yeah,
they dealt with that problem succinctly to
succinctly,
the
yes,
point
they did.
that the Barbary pirate states were like, "All right, please,
Yeah,
enough. We
enough.
don't
Yeah,
want any
they
more."
just keep in mind the Americans are the ones who ended piracy in that area, not the British, not the
That's right.
French, not certainly
Americans
not
and
the
the
Muslims. The
Swedes. The
Americans did.
Swedes of all people
Yeah,
got
well,
involved.
yeah,
They said, "All
but
right, we've had enough of
yeah,
you.
but
Let's do something."
they were just swabbies. I mean, let's see. The Swedes can't be much more than swabbies. Let's be fair. And if you're Swedish and you're insulted, success.
They
But
have it
anyway,
coming. You don't get to be the tallest and prettiest and strongest
hmm
people in the world and not get shit on
and
sometimes.
the
All right.
most feminist though. That's their
Yes.
claim to fame today. But we are getting a little bit away from the subject, and of course it's all connected. But what do you do in the Levant?
Yep.
Because this can't continue. It just can't. This is ridiculous. It needs to stop, dude.
Yep. I'd say there's, like I said, I think there's maybe three. I'm outside if I sound funny. There's like three options. Uh, Two of them involve genocide.
Uh huh.
Nobody should want that.
You know.
And then the other one is somebody has to be displaced because I don't think a two-state solution works. I think the
No,
tensions are
you
just
have
going
to
to boil up
displace.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's going to have to go.
Yeah.
And
Because this
as much as I hate to say this, as a staunch right winger, I think the people who have to go are probably the Palestinians
it's the
because
easiest choice. I mean, because
exactly,
if you give a Palestinian state, they will still continually kill Jews. They will not
yes,
stop. The Jews can happily not kill anyone. They can. Actually, they've proven that. They can the Israelis can sit there very happily and not murder anybody. But
that's
the
right.
Palestinians
For a
cannot.
nominal fee, of course.
For a nominal fee, of
Yes,
course.
as long as you pay. Yeah.
Do you guys see that meme? It was the perfect meme of all time. You had
Uh-oh.
showing the Israelis fighting against Hamas, and it was Leslie Nielsen in one of the Naked Guns, and he's standing on a hall. I think it was the Untouchables parody, right? And
Yeah.
he's shooting up, and there's a coin on the ground. He picks it up, looks at it, puts it in his pocket, continues shooting. It was so perfect, dude. So perfect.
Oh,
Stereotype
that's good.
anyone? Oh, it was great.
God
Uh,
bless Leslie Nielsen.
God bless Leslie Nielsen. Damn right.
He might be the
Uh,
funniest white man to ever live.
he
He
was
might be.
hilarious. Nah, well, Norm Macdonald. I don't.
Norm's on that list
Yeah,
too. He's in that conversation. Norm was just effortlessly funny though. Like he could make things that weren't funny just by the way he would say them. Like he had this joke where he would make people laugh just by saying 9/11. He would just say 9/11, and the way he would say it and look at him, they just start laughing because
it's
it was
Norm.
just so awkward. It was
Yeah.
just Norm's humor. Anyway,
I love the one where he was on one of those talk shows. I can't remember. I think it was the redheaded guy. Um, but
Conan. Yeah.
yeah, Conan, and he was talking to some girl, and he was giving her a hard time. She was a cutie, is probably why. But he said it sounds incredibly boring, and then later on, that she said the name of the movie is Chairman of the Board, and Conan O'Brien said, "What are you gonna do with that, Norm? What are you gonna do with that?" He said, "Well, board's probably spent BORED," and of course they all lost it. Uh, he's so clever, Norm Macdonald, dude. He's
Oh, that's
quick. You have to be smart.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, there something needs to be done. This is ridiculous. It's something has to be done. And I really think I agree with you. You just need to move one of the populations.
yeah.
You just
Somebody's
need
got to
to.
move.
Um, if you wanted to be completely fair, it's the Israelis that should move because they're not
Yeah.
from there. They were forcibly put in by the British and the international
The
community. To be
But
fair,
that is far less likely to
it
actually
is
happen. They're just too powerful.
incredibly impossibly likely, and of
Yeah.
course, it would just leave the Palestinians open to absolute genocide because those other
Yeah.
Muslims do not care about them at all. So that would actually be inhumane to the Palestinians.
Yeah.
It would just Just take there's about 4.5 million of them, I think. I think it's
Something
around
like
that
that.
number. Someone
I
check
have
it
a
for me.
solution.
Oh God.
Send the Palestinians to Australia.
Oh.
They do like the
Yeah,
heat.
see, the heat, they'll be used to the heat, but there'll just be something about fucking with them big ass outback spiders. It'll just calm you down after,
It might.
It
doing that
is
It
shit.
true.
might.
They
I
won't have to
was.
worry about people trying to kill them. The continent will do that for them. Don't worry.
Rain,
My
a couple,
suggestion was to give them
couple, couple of
California,
king,
but you know,
Oh
nah,
God. Oh
couple,
God.
couple kangaroo kicks. Alu won't Akbar as much.
you probably wouldn't. You're right. Uh, but
It's
yeah, I mean, 4.5 million people. They got to go somewhere. Obviously, it'd be better if they stayed in the region. Something that Jordan wouldn't take them. But
No.
some place that has lost a lot of people recently and they could use them that has similar mindset. I don't know, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, Iraq.
Yeah,
There's a
Syria.
few different places. Syria, yeah, but the problem is Syria is a very Christian country,
It
and that's
is.
going to
That
be
is
that's going
true.
to cause
That is
conflict.
true. Well, I don't know. They don't. They. I mean, like I said, everyone picks on the Christians in the Levant, but um, less than others, though. I mean,
Yeah,
like you go to Lebanon, they hate them some Jews, boy. But
yeah.
Christians get along there, no problem. Syria as well. They hate them Jews, but
Christian,
the Christians are everywhere. They
for the
don't have a
most part,
problem. They're
Christians
less
get along with
trouble.
everybody.
Yeah, because well, these days most Christians that get murdered are in Africa, right?
Yes.
Most the Muslims kill each other all the time. Sure, Jews are always targets. Sure, we just had a Israeli couple murdered in Alexandria, Egypt, yesterday because a
Hmm.
policeman wanted to support Hamas. So he just, oh, you're Israelis, boom, boom, a cop, right? Killed them.
Oh, okay.
Just
That's fine.
an
Yeah.
old Israeli couple for Allahu Akbar, right? But most of the Christians that get murdered are actually in Africa.
Yep.
So, they seem to coexist better. But once again, the Muslims do not call them Hebrews. They don't even
Hmm.
refer to them as Jews. They call them Zionists or
Well,
Israelis.
because proper Islamic theology, of what I know of it, they're supposed to treat Jews and Christians
The
as
Hebrews.
equals.
Yeah, they're dimming.
Yes.
They're dimming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
and they do.
supposed they call them the people of the book. They're also
Yeah,
people of the Torah, and you're supposed to treat them with dignity and
right.
respect. You're not supposed to make war against them ever. In fact, it's
But they
forbidden
make a
to make war.
distinction with the Israelis, though.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
because they're not actually the people of the book.
they're not the
Like
people of the
they're
book.
wearing the
Yeah.
skin is what they're doing.
Well, yeah. Once again, it's the Khazars, and they understand that 1,200 years ago, during a very interesting time in human history at that period. But
Yeah.
the king, the Khazar king, and this is back up around the Caspian Sea, Black Sea area, right? Decided to convert the entire population over to Judaism. I mean, the king did this. Now, eventually, they were very powerful. The Khazar Empire was quite powerful, but they ended up getting
Hmm.
beaten, pushed out, and just like with the Huns, they got pushed west. Right? The Huns, of course, ended up in a little place that's called Hungary,
Yep.
the land of the Huns, Hungary, far away from their initial, step marching history, way far away because they got pushed west. And of course, these Khazars got pushed so far west that they ended up in what we call Austria and Germany today, or old ancient Germania. And that's why when you go look at it, you see all these Israelis on the TV talking. They all have these super German names.
Yes.
They're all
Yeah.
German names because they're Khazar, right?
That's right.
Now there are actual Hebrews popping around, actual Hebrew Jews that you see them, but every time you see them, they're like, we don't know nothing about Zionists. They are not part of the Torah. They don't like the Israelis.
That's right.
When you find actual Jews, they don't care for the Zionists at all.
I find that fascinating.
Isn't it interesting? Because an actual Hebrew these days is extremely, I mean extremely pacifist to
Yep.
stupidity levels, right?
Yes.
but anyway, there now to continue with it though, the fact that we need something to do, but the general comparison of the Israeli to the Hamas Palestinian is not comparable.
Yep.
Did you? But I saw a few videos I thought was very interesting. Of course, many of them were little girls and kids spitting on dead bodies and kicking dead bodies, and little girls with machine guns and people jumping around singing about the deaths of Israelis. As you do. But did you notice the weapons they were carrying? Did you guys reckon? Did you take a
I did
moment to look?
notice that
Yeah.
for some reason they don't have
Yeah.
AKs.
What happened to the AK-47s?
Huh.
Yeah.
Where in fact did they get
Where did
these
they
what
get
look like
all of these?
ARs or
No,
M4s?
those are AR-15s without question, dude.
Mhm.
They're all over the place. Where did they all come from?
How did they get their hands on those old
Hmm.
President Puddin' Brain?
Where did they
Because it's
get
not
eight
like it's
thousand
common.
missiles? They
Yeah,
made them.
they made them. That's silliness. That's silliness, is what that is. Um, yeah, no, there's definitely some fuckery afoot.
Oh yeah.
These weapons are clearly Western weapons. They're not the old AK-47 or
No.
something similar that we're used to
And a
seeing.
lot of people are blaming Iran for doing it, and they might have well had something to do with it. But most of that weaponry, like they were saying, they made them. And I saw a whole bunch, and it's like these morons, these CNN and MSNBC morons, standing in front of burning building and saying mostly peaceful.
Yes, it's
They're
fiery but mostly peaceful.
fiery but mostly peaceful. You have these idiot talking heads on the news here saying, "Oh, these are handmade rockets. They become quite proficient at making these handmade rockets." Well, while the video behind them shows a Hamas soldier holding an American shoulder-launched rocket, literally right behind them on the video. He's holding an American weapon.
That's right.
Yeah, they didn't
That's
make that.
no, no. Um,
Americans made it, probably in China.
Probably Chinese people made
Yeah.
it with American money. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, yeah. No, it's
Stupid,
obviously
dude.
ludicrous. It's obviously ridiculous. These weapons that these people have are clearly not supplied by any kind of terrorist state. They're supplied by Western powers. I don't know
Or
how they
just
got them. I don't know
procured
the way
with
it got
money.
them. Yeah, or they were just bought from money that we gave them.
Right.
But the reality of it is, all of these things is on all of this is on the hegemon. You're talking about Britain earlier. When Britain did these things, they were the hegemon at the time. They were the powerful country,
They were.
and they completely controlled world
Everything.
trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything, world politics, everything. And now America's been that since then, basically. And because we're weak, and nobody can deny we're weak. Nobody with a brain can sit there and tell me that we're not weak. We're
No.
weak as hell right now. And because we are, these sorts of things are much easier to facilitate.
Right.
It doesn't happen as it can happen. It doesn't happen anywhere near as often when America is strong. When the world perceives America as being strong with a strong leader, these things simply do not happen like this. And
No,
I'm not
because you
talking.
know you
I'm not
can't get away
talking
with it.
wishful thinking. I'm not saying, oh, well, because Trump's great. Trump ain't great, but he was a strong leader on on the international stage.
Mm.
People they either didn't understand him, so that made them fear him, or they did understand him, so that made them like him.
Right.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And Biden is such a, well, he's Biden. He's before he was president. Back when he was vice president, even when he was senator, he was always a laughing stock on the international stage.
Yeah,
Always.
Biden
There
and
was memes.
Obama
There was
very
all
clear about
sorts of
that.
stuff. Yeah, Obama himself was making jokes about him. Like, this isn't like some right wing conspiracy theory. This was at the time the president of the United States was talking about how weak Joe is effectively on the international stage and how people look see him and view him. Um, Now he was doing it tongue in cheek, but it was true.
It
Like
was
it's
true.
the
It's one
truth.
of it's literally tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But I mean, and you wonder where they could have procured this because this isn't necessarily a direct transfer of weapons to them from the Americans, right? But
No. No.
of course, not too many months ago, Joe sent $75 million to the Palestinians, right?
Yep.
Yep.
We have
I don't get you a lot of guns.
it'll get you something, yeah.
You get
Um,
some firearms.
and of course, You have all of these activists that go to Palestine all the time to protest. Who knows how much money they piled into Palestine? And of
Yep.
course, keep in mind, under the radar, illegally, by the way, but this administration doesn't care about legality. They gave Iran $6 billion,
Yeah. For what?
right?
Again, by the way. By the way, why do they keep giving around billions of
Yeah.
dollars? What's going on there?
Why is it that Obama had whoopsie after whoopsie after whoopsie of supply and weapon drops into the various war zones he was running, and they just
Yep.
happened to fall into enemy hands? How come every
ISIS and others.
whoopsies
Yep.
was always into the Muslim hand and not into somebody else's?
Oopsie
Right?
daisy. Oh,
Oopsie daisy,
$50
right?
million worth of guns just disappeared
Oh,
again.
and then how
Oh,
many
shuck.
billion did Biden leave in Afghanistan?
Oh, I don't even remember the number. Too many. That's how many.
And we know
Um,
the Taliban has requested the right to move through territory to get over there and fight Israel. And now
yep.
The Jordanians won't allow it. However,
No.
I kind of bet you the Iranians, the Syrians, and the Lebanese will.
Well, especially
Yeah.
considering just a few years ago, Israel just straight up attacked Syria, just without provocation, without warning, just hit them, boom, hit a weapons depot or something. Uh, what?
Well,
And nothing really came of that
they
because
were being
Syria can't.
proactive.
Yeah, Syria can't really do anything about it, especially in the current state that it's in. But the Taliban could, so I
I
could
still
believe that they would,
disgust me about Aleppo, dude.
Oh
One of
God,
the most
what
ancient cities on earth is completely
Chester?
obliterated.
Chester, but the libertarians had the right, well, they had a answer. What is Aleppo? Remember Gary Johnson in 2016? He was a libertarian candidate, and he was doing an
What
interview on
is
one of the.
Aleppo? No, he didn't.
He did.
He
He
didn't.
absolutely did. Somebody asked him, "What about what can be done in the current situation with Aleppo because it was getting leveled?" And he's like, What's Aleppo?" He didn't know what it was.
Aleppo.
Yeah,
Holy
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the most ancient cities on earth, and it's completely
yeah.
leveled. It's completely leveled.
Who knows?
It's
Who knows
this. Oh,
what was
it's
lost
so sad,
forever?
dude. It's so
Yeah,
sad. People forget how ancient Syria and Lebanon and the Levant are. They forget.
it's yeah,
I mean, the
yeah.
desert swallowed the Sumerian culture because the Tigris and Euphrates moved and the
Yes.
desert swallowed it. Archaeologists have reopened a lot of stuff and cool, right? But they only dig down to a certain depth, though. But
Right.
nevertheless, but these other places on the coast, the Levant, Lebanon, Syria, that whole stretch, that Hyksos Hittite, they've been there forever, dude. Those are
Yes.
ancient places, dude. Keep in mind these Saudi Arabians and their Mecca. Mecca was a freaking dot in the desert, dude. They went and
Yep.
stole all of that shit from Damascus by force, right? Those are
Correct.
the real ancient human resources right there, and we've just allowed it to be absolutely
To the
obliterated.
point that even the Romans didn't like to do anything too crazy in Syria. Like they really had a high respect for Syria because you can find some of the, I can't remember which general it was, but basically it was one who got his ass kicked over there. Uh, and when he came back with his tail between his legs, he was talking about how impressive Syria is as a place. It's the knowledge that it was there
Oh,
and
it's
all these
beautiful.
things.
And like
Uh,
Pompey and all these famous names you can throw off during the Julius
General.
Caesar time. They loved
Yep.
that was their resort, man. They hung out in Damascus.
Yep.
That was their party
So they're
town, dude.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous place to be. It was the place to hang out. It was where they would go. A lot of the intelligentsia of the age came from there and went there to study and things. And that's all gone. That's all. A
It's
lot of that's
sad,
been
dude.
destroyed in the last little while here with these wars, these completely unnecessary wars. Um, yeah, it's tragic. Syria is one of those places that is as ancient as you're going to find in the world, and to watch it fall into these sorts of chaos is tragic. I mean,
It
Israel
is.
is too. That whole area is. What I was going to say when you were mentioning it earlier, I didn't understand the difference on a spiritual level between America and there till I was there. You can feel it. When you walk in there, when you walk into these ancient places, these truly ancient places, it's different. If you've
Hmm.
never done it, if you've never, especially if you've lived there your whole life, you won't understand what I'm saying most likely because you've always been in it. But if you come from a place that's young, like America, it doesn't have this thousands of years of history like they do. Uh, and then you go over there, it's just different. You can
Yeah,
feel it, the weight of it. It's there. It's real, and you know you're in a place that's been there for. Like when we went to because you can go to the temple and everything, go to what's supposedly a wall from Solomon's temple. You can also go to Old Jerusalem. And in Old Jerusalem, they still have the original walls, or what they
right.
claim are the original walls,
Well,
up,
there
and you
is
can
a
feel it.
there is a bit of
You-
science going on here,
Yep,
because the ancients were, when it came to stone, water, and sound, they were
yep,
very, very efficient. And a lot of
massive.
those places, like Damascus, like Jerusalem, these places we're talking about, the the foundation of stones are built intermittently with quartz, rock with a lot of quartz in it, and they're
Yep.
electrically charged because the sewerage, people don't talk about that, but ancient sewerage and water movement was quite advanced. And underneath Damascus, for instance, there are sewers and water aqueducts and all kind of things moving. And sure, the water is supplying fountains and stuff in the city,
Right.
and water movement, but it's also energizing the stone, which creates a
Mhm.
minus ion energetic field. And the simple fact of the matter is humans like the this negative ion area. Our bodies are attuned to it. We feel better. It's a power spot feel, right?
Yep.
Whereas if it's a
Low
rainy day,
ionization.
you usually feel gloomy and down because that's very positive, attractive ion, right? And you
Yeah.
don't want that
High energy. Yep.
high energy. But the ancients understood the power of creating a power spot. It makes humans feel better. You
Well,
just
you know what's
feel better.
crazy?
Yeah,
You know what's crazy, Chester? All of the ancient religions have a version of that as well, including Judaism and Christianity, and I'm
sure.
assuming Islam as well, where they have verses in the Bible where God talks about the stillness of God, how he is calm and he's calming. He brings stillness, which is basically just a negative charge. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Uh, it calms people down, it brings peace, it brings clarity, and that's all very much real. I have this theory, and it's not mine, but I've seen other people promulgate it, and I like it. The idea that hauntings, you know, hauntings have every culture has some form of haunting
ghosts.
as its ghosts, spirits, whatever they call them. I think all that is basically what you just said, but our ability to project our own mental energy into the stone, into the crystal, into these things, and it just kind of lingers. And that's why a lot of hauntings, I'd say probably all of them or most of them, are not really sensical. Like a lot of people will just see like a woman, right? She doesn't really do anything. She's just there and then disappears or something like that. I think it's quite literally just a feedback loop on a metaphysical level of the people that were there.
Could be.
And it's not like a conscious force. It's not like a soul like we'd say it or any of that stuff. It's just residual energy trapped
Yeah.
in the
And
rocks.
maybe it explains why they don't have feet.
Yep. They don't have feet, and it explains why when you disturb a building, like you do renovations or whatever, they can come out more, right? There's a lot more reports of it when people
Right.
renovate an old house where
Well,
now all of a sudden they have hauntings. There's
and
this stuff happens.
it is interesting when you're talking about that because you look at Hollywood. Hollywood's portrayal of a ghost is very different. If you go to talk
Yeah,
to someone who states they've seen a ghost, they're always they look just like real people. They're not transparent. They're not floating.
correct.
The only weird thing about them is they don't do anything. They move back and forth or they're in some kind of loop, but they don't have feet.
Right.
When you talk to
Yep.
someone who's genuinely believes they saw a ghost, this is the description. It's not like Hollywood where things are floating and transparent. It's not. That's not what people who've seen ghosts say. That's not what they say.
Right.
But I don't know. But I'm just saying that those kind of things and the ancient technologies are real. And they understood. And of course, keeping people peaceful and happy, especially around a temple, is a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Calm them down. We do the same thing today, by the way. We don't not, well, energy,
Yeah.
yes, but
It's
we
called
do it in
Prozac.
well, yes, but I mean like in our construction. In certain there's certain ways you can build a building. We know this for a fact that can cause people to be uneasy, and not just from appearance, just
Yeah.
being in it, right?
Yeah.
It causes you to just not feel well if it's too cramped of ceilings. It'll cause you to feel worse, right?
It's called
But
German construction.
it's also in the paint, the colors. We know for a fact that like light green, for instance, is calming. People
Mm.
tend to be more calm around light green and more aggressive around deep red.
Mhm.
Uh, that's the same principle. It's just with a different form of energy, which is color, because that's all color is. It's just a form of light, light waves.
Spectral energy. Yeah.
Um, yeah, spectral energy. So it's the same. It's basically the same principle, but we do it with color, and we also do it with sound. There's a reason they play calming music in elevators because they don't want people freaking out in an elevator. That's it. Yeah. Or you go into your doctor's office.
Fucking empamema, busting over shit.
You go to your doctor's office and they'll have, just some kind of nice music playing. Sometimes they'll just have the radio on, but typically they don't put things on the radio that are designed to cause you to get angry. So they'll put something on. There'll be that noise. That sound is soothing. It keeps your mind from going to dark places, really, is all it does. But it's soothing, it's calming. We do the same
It's like
thing.
Megadeth in the elevator.
Yeah, we should.
The ancients did the same thing, but they did it with structure and they did it with, especially with sound. It blew my mind when I was in Caesarea, and we were standing on this amphitheater stage, and somebody else was at the top of it in the what would have been the stands, and we were talking just like this. We could hear each other like we are standing right next to each other.
Oh yeah.
2,000-year-old
Oh yeah.
structure. I was like, what the hell?
No,
How did
yeah.
they figure this
They're
out?
very
How did
clever.
they figure this out?
All those mosques, and keep in mind, a lot of these things we call mosques are way more ancient than that. They're
Yep.
not mosques, uh, but whatever. Many of them have a point, which is usually has a beautiful mosaic on it. You could stand in the middle of the room or somewhere in the room, and you can speak, and you don't have to shout at all. You can speak very normal voice. Everyone in the area can hear you clearly.
Yep.
They're very, very clever when it comes to sound. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, all of this is connected, but we still have the problem. We're going to leave the Grimlock. Grimlock's going to solve the problem for us.
Uh-oh.
Grimlock, what do we do in the Levant?
Yep.
How do we
As I said,
solve it?
I think we need to send the Palestinians to Australia.
Okay, fine.
He's down for it.
He's
Send him
down
down
for
there
it.
with the Aboriginals. They'll figure it out.
Hey, look, you can't look. I'm putting it like this: you can't send them here
Yeah.
because
No thanks.
they find out you can be brown skinned and kill people and not go to jail. They learn how to sing pumped up kicks in Arabic. We're fucked.
That is true. That is true. That is true. But yeah, no, something has to be done. It's just enough. It's enough, and it's just I feel. I don't know that it will be different, but I feel that from the kind of noise I'm seeing from people online and stuff, everyone feels the same. This has happened many times. This is nothing new. We've seen this happen over and over and over and over and over. But it feels like this time, the internet is like, something needs to be done. It really feels like,
Flabbergasted.
yeah, there's a frustration, and
Well,
understand. And like I said, what are the Israelis to do? What are the Palestinians to do? I get it.
yep. And it's the frustration is also because whether anybody wants to admit it or not, whether the liberals or the whatever want to admit it or not, while Trump was president, things were definitely better in
Oh,
this
way
on
better.
this front. Whether it was terrorist attacks in general or just the fact that there wasn't these massive wars break. I mean, for crying out loud, Obama destroyed, conservatively, three different countries with his foreign policy. Conservatively,
No,
three
Libya
different
for damn
countries
sure.
destroyed. Syria
Syria.
is only surviving because they refuse to surrender. Uh, you could make the case that he's responsible for Somalia's situation. I mean, there's a few different ones you can make the case for where he
Sudan.
definitely Sudan, where he
Mhm.
definitely and,
Libya.
and I say him, his foreign policy definitely made it worse, made
Oh
it
yeah,
made the situation
Obama was
worse.
horrible. Yeah, he was bad.
Where's the example with Trump? What country did he make significantly worse? The only two you could even kind of do are Yemen, which was mostly the Saudis doing anyway, and Hong Kong if you consider it its own thing. That's about it. But as far as like mass death, like we're involved in. I mean, for crying out loud, Libya has open air slave markets again, like
They
they
do.
used to back in the day, and that's because we destroyed Libya. We
Well,
destroyed them. We
Hillary
destroyed the
came,
government,
she saw, and he died. You see.
and then she cackled like a demon.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But you hear
yeah,
her the other day, just the other day, saying that she thinks they need to take the MAGAites, the half the country, right?
yeah.
And
Good
they
luck.
need to go to re-education camps.
Yeah,
She
deprogram
said
them.
this.
I
She
heard her.
said this.
Yes, I heard them. No, don't worry. We hear them. We hear them. Um, they're not. I mean, they're welcome to try. I'm not even a MAGA guy, really. I mean, I like the idea of
Yeah,
Make
but
America
as far
Great
as
Again.
she's
That'd be nice
concerned,
if
you
somebody
are
would
though.
do it, of course. Uh, but come on, quit talking about it. Let's do it. Let light that fuse. I'm begging you to light that fuse, please. This will be over
Yeah,
quick.
it would be nice. Yeah.
Ugh,
Anyway,
but they won't. They're cowards. They'll keep slow playing it and boiling the frog because
and
they
they're
know if
winning
they go too
anyway.
fast.
So why
Yeah,
bother? They're winning
yeah.
anyway.
They know if they go
Yeah.
too fast, they try and pull the ripcord. It's just going to backfire on them. They've done the simulations for about 45 years now, and they know they lose in open conflict with the American populace. They just lose. They can't win. There's
Mhm.
no win solution. It's like
Yeah.
Israel right now. There's no
Well,
win
they've got
solution.
everything locked up, and a lot of the noise we're seeing is them just gloating.
Hmm.
Really, I mean, because they have
Yep.
won, so
Like uh,
it is what it is.
like the book says, pride goeth before a fall, and a haughty spirit before destruction.
Mm, mm.
Let them brag. Go on, brag about it. Hey, maybe nothing will happen. Maybe I'm wrong, and
Oh,
I'm fine with
eventually
that.
something will happen. Of course, things
Yeah,
always come around and go around. But yeah, now this, I don't know. I just this situation, it's just bad. I mean, I just don't understand these grown men, and I'm talking about Hamas, right?
yeah,
These grown ass men running around with so much emotion in their throat. Allahu Akbar, so much emotion in their heart. The fact that their voices are quivering with
yep,
with joy that they have beaten down and murdered a little girl or a little boy. And I mean children, not just
mm,
the women, that too. But I mean, you go see these videos. These grown ass men are just elated, and I mean this in the literal meaning of the word, elated with themselves that they were able to defeat a little girl.
yep.
Is there no shame? Do they have no pride? What kind of human is that? I'm serious.
That's a
That
very good
is,
question.
and it's not just a single individual, it's all of them dancing in the
Yep.
streets, excited at the death and murder, and I'm sure rape as well. Don't you be fooled by that bullshit,
Let's not get silly.
right?
Of
Let's
course,
not
there's
get
a lot of
silly.
rape. Yeah,
Of little girls, because that's mainly what they took. They killed the men on the spot. They took women,
as
Yep.
you do. Yeah,
right? And children. See the video of the little boy getting beat to death? Little boy, 8 years
of
old.
course, of course.
Yeah.
Can't
And you
have
know
them
what they
grow up
did?
to
They
be a
captured
problem.
it, brought it back into Gaza, and threw him in the street and let the other little Palestinian kids beat him to death.
Yeah, they're
Okay?
animals.
They're animals. This is animal
Um,
behavior. This needs to be dealt with. It's
here's
just,
the
it's not, it's
here-
dude.
here's the problem. All what we're seeing now is we're seeing it because we have social media, we have the internet, and we have all these things. This real time ability to share this information and video and things. We're getting to see now what life was like in a lot of places in the world during wartime. Like this stuff is not new. This is just humanity doing what humanity does in these sorts of conflicts. And it's a shame that the only reason that these sorts of things happen to the level that they do is because there's nobody strong enough to stop them. These sorts of situations are a return to, as much as people don't like it, it's the truth, historically speaking, especially. This is a return to normalcy. The last few, I don't know, 100 years or so of relative peace, especially since World War II, of relative peace comparatively on a grand scale. Very few people were making total war in civilized parts of the world. It just wasn't really happening.
Yeah.
And that is unique. It doesn't happen throughout history very often. It's pretty rare when there's someone strong enough to enforce peace. And that's going away now. So what we're seeing now is a return to historical norms. We're seeing now, China and Russia are taking their place on the world stage again
Mhm.
as major powers at a level they haven't been in a very long time. Um, the U.S. is rescinding in its power back to a more regional power, which is probably better for the U.S. in the end if we can do something about this damn border. Um, but it's not going to be better for the rest of the world. And we're seeing Asia become very what's the word I'm looking for? Not oxidized. Oh crap! Basically, they're becoming hard. They're hardening their borders up. It's becoming much
Oh
more
yeah.
apparent who the powers over there are and who they're going to be going forward as the hegemon fades. I think that China is, as we know it now, is going to fall. Though. Before it happens, before the entirety of the world order is completely and radically changed by the collapse of the American hegemony, which is happening in real time, whether people
Well,
want to
they are
admit it or not.
connected. Keep that in mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think the current state. I don't think China as a country will disappear,
No, of
but the
course not.
current state of it will. China's
The
been around
CCP.
since forever. Yeah, there'll always be some form of China over there.
Yeah. No,
They
we're
may not
we've
call
already.
themselves that, but yeah,
Yeah, we've already seen several attempts on Xi's life recently. His own
yeah,
government's trying to kill him, coup d'état attempts.
yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
it's
no
done. It's
CCP.
what I'm saying is that's done, but what that means is a return to historical normalcy. You're going to see these borders redrawn again, and these borders will be redrawn around more sensible lines, much more
Yeah,
ethnic
cultural
lines,
ones.
much more
Yeah.
religious, cultural lines, instead of these imposed ones that were imposed after the greatest war of all time. Or at least the greatest one we actually have video of anyway. Um, and I think that's probably in the end going to end up being a good thing. I wanted to say this earlier too. You were talking about this. All these problems that we're having now are not problems that were caused by nationalism. They are problems that are caused by globalism and internationalism.
Oh yeah.
Nationalism solves these problems. If we would just let people exist in their own places and stop meddling,
Oh, the greed of
most
money,
of these
dude.
problems
Yeah.
go away.
Yeah,
That's
it's
that's
true.
all it is. It's just greed.
It
They're
is.
chasing money. They want to control the money flow because control the money flows to control the world. And the British did it before the Americans, and
Yeah,
the
but we
Greeks and
don't
the Romans
have the
did it.
smart people that were operating before.
Correct.
Yeah, we
And
just
that's
don't.
why it's just over. The American hegemony's over. This idea that you're gonna have this massive global situation, I don't think that's realistic. I think
No, it's
I don't
already
think that
crumbling. Yeah.
yeah, the IQ of the world is crumbling. Like this is a problem that no one
Yeah.
wants to talk about because you have one side that's a bunch of basically fanatics who want to pretend IQ isn't real, and then you have the other side who doesn't have any actual institutional power to
Mhm.
try and correct this course. So we're stuck in this quagmire of bullshit and
Yeah.
stupidity, which all these problems have very simple solutions. They're just not easy solutions. And people
Well,
would much rather do
they
easy.
affect
They would rather
people's
do
money.
complex and easy than simple and hard. That's
Right,
what people
because
would
it
rather do.
affects their money, and that's the problem. But,
Yes.
you know, just because you might have low IQ, which really has to do with how much education you have, right? Doesn't mean
Mm,
evil can't be clever. I'll give an example
correct.
that's here. It's going on with Hamas. There's a video going around online, a couple of them actually, and they basically have a room full of, I don't know, 30 some young girls, teenagers, young adult girls, that they threw in the room and they let them keep their phones. Right.
Yep.
And of course, these girls are live streaming, they're tick-tocking, and they're trying to get call for help and all that kind of stuff. And every now and then, this mask, face covered Hamas guy will shoot the gun off and come into the room, standing there ominously. The girls scream. Um, what do you think that's creating? Because one, sure, we can track, we know exactly where they are, I'm sure. But basically, Hamas
Hmm.
is saying, "Well, come fucking get him then," because we got a guy right here. We'll shoot them as soon as your soldiers show up,
As
right?
soon as we see them.
And
Yep.
that is clever terrorism.
Yeah.
It is clever. Let them
It's
keep their phones. Let them send the misery out, because
the thing
those
that
girls are dead. Those girls are all dead.
unfortunately,
They
yeah.
will
The
be.
thing that is tragic, but it's unfortunately reality. We're returning to total war. We haven't really had total war in a very long time in the civilized world. In the third world, and then in the savage parts of the world, yeah, it's never stopped. But in the civilized world, we largely don't wage war like that. And unfortunately, because we're weaker now, we're going to have to. And that's the reality. That's the reality nobody wants to face. That's the reason why Ukraine has lasted as long as it has is largely because we were propping Ukraine up with money and everything else, but also because Russia doesn't want to wage total war. They've been very clear on this. They're waging very surgical war, very clean war as much as they can. I don't think that's going to last forever with anybody because everyone's going to want. And this happened. This is basically what happened. It's happened many times throughout history. When the hegemon falls or becomes too weak to be a hegemon anymore, it becomes a gold rush, and that gold rush is paved with blood every time.
Oh yeah.
And
No, that
whoever
is
can be the
true.
most brutal for the longest period of time will win.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we're going to live to see these horrors played out because now we have the internet, so we get to watch them in real time. Whereas
Yeah.
back in the day, people just heard about it, or right? They had a cousin of a brother of an uncle or something that was in it, involved in it, but they maybe themselves didn't see it necessarily. Well, that's not going to be the case this time. This time, we're going to get to watch what total war looks like, and people got to see a little bit of it. You were talking about that girl that the Palestinians were dragging through their city, or
Mhm.
through their city, quote unquote, their area. Um, that's total war. I mean,
It is.
we
There are
have
many.
romanticized versions of it throughout history. But Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Tepes, I mean, he did basically the same thing. He just put them on pikes instead.
He did.
Um, that is total war. That is the state of actual conflict when diplomacy is no longer an option.
Yeah.
And that is where Palestine and Israel are at, and they've been there for a very long time. And the only reason it didn't kick off to a full on all out war is largely just because Israel had enough backup and enough help that it was suicidal to end.
True.
But
Well,
now because they smell the blood in the water, they're going to try it.
right. No, and that is why this pulled off. And, once again, we could talk about, what the proper solution should be. We could talk about where all these weaponry come from, these American weapons, because they are. Don't listen to these talking heads on the news. Go watch the videos. Those are American weapons.
They
Those
build
are
them
not Middle
themselves.
Eastern. They're not Russian. They're not China made. Those are American weapons. So that's
Oh,
a big
jeez.
question. But here's the thing: we talked about what should happen. Let's finish up today because I had a couple other things I had, but no, it's inappropriate. This
Yeah.
is what we're talking about. Let's talk about what we think is going to happen, the
Ooh.
reality of it, because I'm feeling from the Israelis, and like I said, what are they supposed to do? You
Yeah.
know, I'm
Well,
feeling that these guys might just go in there and level Gaza. I mean, all
They
of it.
could they could do. They could do. I mean, they could have always done it, to be
And then, of
honest. They've
course, the
had the
West Bank
power.
is already kicking off. Keep that in mind. The
Yeah.
Hezbollah up in Lebanon is already kicking off. Keep that in mind. The Taliban are supposedly marching. Keep that in mind. There's more coming. So it's not just Gaza. It's also going to have to deal with Lebanon. It's also going to have to deal with the West Bank. The only good thing they have going for them is Jerusalem is faced by Jordan, and Jordan's not interested in any of this nonsense. They like their Rolexes.
Yes.
I mean,
They're a
it's very
fairly
simple.
peaceful
Yeah,
fairly peaceful nation.
right.
Um,
So
the
what?
other
Yeah.
I would say it'll largely depend on, as much as I've been saying railing on about how weak the hegemon is, it'll depend on what we do. Um, because while we are weak and there is blood, we are a wounded hegemon, we're still the hegemon. America is. Whether anyone likes it or not, we are.
Oh yeah.
I don't like it personally, but we are. It's just the state we live in. And it'll depend next year. I mean, we're coming up here. It's only 2 more months, not even, before 2024 hits, and we
Hmm.
have a big election.
Oh, we're a year
So
away from it. Yeah.
I think it'll depend on who wins that election. Now, whether or not we have fair elections or not, that's a different topic. But if Biden somehow wins that election, I think it's going to be real bad. It's going to be real
I
bad
don't
over
see
there.
how he could run. I'm a bit surprised. I mean, I don't really give a shit. And of course, well, you can say this on YouTube now. The Democrats stole that election
Yeah,
with shenanigans. They stole it. We all know it. The problem, the truth is, and you don't hear this said from the so-called right, is it should have never been that close in the beginning that they could steal it. That's
right.
the issue for me, because
Yeah,
you can only see an election if it's close, right?
that's true.
You can only that that's the reality, and it was way too close for them to give them that opportunity. I don't understand
Trump shot
how it
himself in the
was, but
foot.
it was. But I can't imagine more than the 5% insanity of Americans voting for Biden again. I can't. Are the Democrats literally going to put him up for reelection? Are they really going to do this? Because I'm not seeing anyone else in the throwing their hat in except for
As of now, yes.
Bobby, which they don't want, and we're only a year out. Well, this is late.
Yes. So if it's going to happen, it has to happen before the new year,
It's
basically,
got to
unless
happen
somebody
very soon.
steps up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the one that they want is Newsom. They want Gavin, old Gavy in there.
Yeah, but he can't.
But I don't think Biden or whoever's controlling Biden wants to step aside. I think he's that person, whoever it is, whether it's him, 2 hours of the day, whatever, has decided he's not moving. Uh, which fair enough, I guess. But I think I absolutely agree with you. I watched it happen. I'm pretty sure Grimlock was there watching it with me. I know a couple people were. We watched what they did on that night. Most people don't even know because they weren't awake. I was because I just knew. I just
Oh, what? I was
knew.
watching Crowder.
I just knew some stuff was going to happen. And then when I saw these trucks, all of a sudden these reports started coming in, basically all at the same time that they were going to stop counting. And then in Milwaukee, I remember it in Milwaukee, one of the boroughs or whatever they called it, I think they call it districts, has reported late. And this big truck, and it's supposedly full of like it's 100 and it was basically the exact amount Biden needed to pull ahead.
Right.
That's how many
Yeah.
votes were in there. It's coming to the thing right now, and it blah 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 blah. Blah. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, here it comes. Here's the fix.
Yeah. No,
And
they fixed it. Yeah.
yeah, and that sort of stuff I watched happen live. So when people tell me there's no evidence, I'm like,
Oh,
all right,
fuck
whatever.
off. Fuck
Yeah.
off. I mean, but I said that's not even the conversation for me. For me, it shouldn't have been that close anyway. But seeing
Well,
as we're
here's why.
coming
That's
into
what I was
next
getting
year,
to.
how could
That's what I was getting to.
Biden win again? I don't understand.
That's what I was getting to. Trump shot himself in the foot. He didn't do what he should have done with COVID once he knew that what was happening was nonsensical. Whether or not the jabs and a lot of the stuff at the very very beginning, okay, fine. I think most people could have forgave him for the first 2 months or so of his response. If he would have come out strong and hard afterwards against all the nonsense these governors were doing, and he didn't. He came out with half measures, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't tell people.
Well,
He honestly should have apologized. If he should have showed a little bit of humility, and he didn't have to like make a big deal about it, but he should have just basically said the way we handled it at the beginning, I was listening to the wrong people, and I'm going forward. We're going to do this, 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 and this,
right. Yeah.
and that would have been a huge step forward for a lot of people. He also shouldn't have been listening to the people who are telling him that he needs to chase, specifically, especially the black vote, so hard. I'm not saying he shouldn't do something, but he basically abandoned the white working class that elected him, and that's why the margins were
We're
what they
so
were.
tight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Trump's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness.
yeah,
He doesn't know himself. He hires the best of the best to know. And that's a good
right.
thing, but it also can be a bad thing, right?
Especially when those people are compromised.
Bought and paid for, yeah.
Yes.
But
But getting
yeah.
back to your question, what
Mm.
happens? How does Biden win again? I don't know. There's a lot. It depends who you listen to. There's a lot of mixed data out there right now about Biden and Trump. Some people out here who are fairly objective say Trump is basically dominating in that competition, and then there's other people who say he's not. So it's all over the board. We can't trust polls. We know that the last three elections, the polls have been wrong,
Well, because
just
people
wrong.
won't answer honestly because they're afraid.
People won't answer honestly, and there's a lot of bias from the poll takers.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you can't trust that. So what can you trust? You can't trust your eyes and your ears. I Here's the worst case scenario for me. The worst case scenario for me is if 2020 was a legitimate election, because that tells me the majority of the American people in places that should know better voted against the best economy in the history of the country. They voted against it, Chester. They
Yes,
voted
the
for
steal.
somebody who was saying things that was obviously going to make everything worse. And guess what he did as soon as he got in there? Made
Made
everything
everything
worse.
worse. Yeah.
The price of gas went up 60 cents a gallon like almost day one. It was right away. It never went back down. And it kept going up. But people again forget 2021. It kept going up. It was $5 a gallon here in Ohio.
It's back. It's
Price of gas.
rising again as we
Yeah.
speak. Um, but yeah, no. So that is interesting. What's going to happen with that? But that's not the question on the board. The question on the
But the
board is
question,
what's going to actually happen in the Levant.
what's going to happen in Levant? I do think it'll matter who is president come
You said that.
2025. Yes.
Okay. But
And
there's
I
there's a
think
year
if it's
between now
Trump,
and then, dude.
yeah, I know.
That's a lot.
I think if it's Trump, I'll go back to that year in a minute. I think if it's Trump, we'll get some form of mostly peaceful resolution. He'll get the people in there he needs to get in there. His killer negotiators will get in there and calm it down enough that will get some. I don't know what it'll look like, but he'll get it calmed back down. But between then and then, it's going to be very, 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 very ugly. And I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
Palestinians are in for hell on
Oh
Earth,
yeah.
to be honest.
I think we could
Because
lose
I
half the
don't think,
population.
yeah, I don't think the Western half of the international community is going to side against Israel ever, to be honest, but especially right now. And obviously, the Eastern side has a lot of vested interests, whether it's religious or otherwise, in the Palestinians being a black mark for Israel as much as possible. So I think you're going to see a lot of bloodshed and then a large stalemate until the American elections are over. Because I don't think America's going to get too directly involved. Not like like I don't think we're going to go invade or anything like that.
Well, now, okay.
And the
Uh,
reason why I don't think that is because it's an election year, and they don't usually the deep state. While they're insane, they're not totally stupid. They don't usually start this kind of kick this stuff off in an election.
however,
Um, we'll see though.
however, a president at war is a president that gets reelected.
Yep,
And
it's true.
the simple fact of the matter is, the vast majority of Americans are huge supporters of Israel. Whether
Yep,
they should be or not is not the question. It doesn't matter. They are, right? And if Biden is fighting the good fight in Levant, ooh, this could be a play, dude. Because we talked about
but
there's no freaking way the Israelis didn't know they were coming across that border. There's no way,
yeah, there's no
right?
shot.
So, like I said, now Hamas might have well doing all this stuff shit on their own, right? But keep in mind, a red flag can also simply be a matter of support,
True.
not necessarily direct action. Because the thing is with Ukraine, it's not working out the way they wanted to. They've been pushing for over a year, saying Russia bad, Russia bad. Oh my God, Ukraine! They've trucked Zelensky all over the planet, literally, right? Throwing
Yep.
tons of money in there, and what's happened? Russia has just systematically just walked right through them, right? And the situation is not what they want. They keep you don't care what the media says. Ukraine has not won this war. They've actually already lost it. I don't
Yes,
know
sir.
why Putin doesn't put a nail in it, but he has his reasons, right? But the Russians are not in danger. It didn't work out, so they need a war somewhere. And fighting to support the Israelis. Oh, the Europeans and Americans love that shit, right? I'm
Yep.
just saying there could be a play here. What do you think, Grimlock?
I think unfortunately the American taxpayers' pockets are about to get a little bit lighter, a lot lighter.
Yeah.
I honestly think these faggots are going to start. They're if not this week, in the next 30 days, they're actually going to pitch sending money to Israel,
Oh, they will
as though
automatically. They
we
won't
don't
even
send
ask you. They'll just do it. Yeah. Yeah.
them. So
That's funny, Alan. West
as
Bank story.
far as boots on the ground, don't I don't think they'll do that right away.
I don't
If
know.
Biden
Uh,
wins, if Biden wins, absolutely. will be over there hardcore. I think even maybe a full scale peacekeeping invasion. If
I
he does not, I don't think Trump will do that.
I
I just don't.
think we're gonna have troops at least in Israel within the month.
Well, we already do, but yeah,
But you know what I mean.
uh, yeah, we'll have like some sort of defensive presence, but I don't think I'm talking like an invasion, like
Yeah, no, I
Iraq,
know. But
whatever.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm I feel there's a play going on here. I really do. And Alan, he said the West Bank story. That's funny. West Side Story. I wonder if Spielberg will do this one and not translate this into English as well. It'll be a great movie. Good job. Good job, Steven. Good job. Showing
Cool.
respect to them Latinos by not having anyone understand what the hell they're saying. Yeah, good job, Steven Spielberg. Good job. You prove your
Doing great.
wokeness.
He's doing great.
He's doing great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think this is going to get bloody, bloody because I feel the international community is just kind of frustrated and flabbergasted with the situation, and specifically the Israelis, because usually Netanyahu, particularly, he's a genius at couching his words.
Hmm.
That dude is smart. He's a very good statesman. Very good, Netanyahu. But there ain't no parson at all, dude. No, we're going in there. If you're a Palestinian, I suggest you get out. He knows they can't, but you get out because we're going to level the place. It's basically what he said. That's
Yep.
basically what he said. We're going to level the place. If you're a Palestinian, you should get out of Gaza. They can't get out. Literally, they're locked in.
Hmm.
Literally, there's a wall around them. They can't get out. So what he's saying is, we're going to kill you all. I mean, and they're just plainly, and every Israeli I've heard, there's no one speaking peace. There's no one speaking calm. Everyone's like, no, no, this is enough, and they're going to go in there. And the West Bank is already kicking. And keep in mind, because these fucking media don't tell you shit, dude. You got to dig so deep to find this stuff. Keep in mind that as we speak, on the hour, every hour in Jerusalem, there are Muslims speaking out of the megaphones of their mosques that are all across Jerusalem and calling for the Muslims in Jerusalem to rise up and kill Jews. This is what they're
Yep.
saying on their bullhorns. They're not saying support Hamas. They're not saying Allahu Akbar. Well, they are, but they're not saying be peaceful. What they're saying is the people, the Muslims of Jerusalem should rise up and murder any Jew they see. This is coming out of every mosque in Jerusalem every hour on the hour. Has you heard anyone mention this to you?
No, but I can believe it. Um. Yeah, I fully believe that. Oh, it's crazy. Craziness over there. And there's no good answers because everybody involved, like we had said, was forced into a situation that nobody should have been in, and now we're stuck with it.
Yep,
We're stuck with this bag of absolute dog shit, and we got to figure out what to do with it. And
that's good one,
I don't know.
Roger.
I
Top
think it,
Golem.
I I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. You could be right. It could just be a big play because it doesn't make any sense that Mossad and the IDF just didn't see this coming. I don't. That's obscene. Uh,
Chad
Either they're
is.
way more incompetent than we thought, or something's up. Uh, and they're not way more incompetent than we thought. They're
Yeah.
fantastic, actually, at what
The
they do.
Chad is renaming famous movies in a Jewish funny way. It's good.
I like
Top
that.
Golem, Offerson and
So I
Gentleman.
think
Good job.
the
Good job.
the uh, the short term future, right? In the short term here, the interim, it's going to get real ugly, real nasty. Let's hope nobody else gets involved. Right? We don't need the Arab countries getting involved. We don't
Oh, they
really
will.
want us to get involved, but they probably will. So it's going to become an absolute quagmire. And I don't know what happens, how fast Israel can, basically blitzkrieg uh, Gaza down.
Well, they are
But
Germans.
yes, but I know it's going to depend on what America does. That's just the truth of it. If we have a president who is, well, Biden, or somebody like Biden, not even necessarily Biden, just a military-industrial complex lover like a Joe Biden is. Um, if we have somebody like that, puppet, a stooge, then we'll be full on involved. And I
Yeah.
mean full on involved. If we don't, I think we get to some form of at least a ceasefire situation, and then we start talking about long-term solutions because nobody ever talks about long. Look, we're doing it here, but not in the
A few
international
good
stage.
gentlemen.
Yeah, I know. It's good, right? A few good
Not in the
gentlemen.
international stage. They don't talk about long-term solutions. Everything's just band-aids, band-aid,
Jurassic
band-aid,
Park.
band-aid, band-aid.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully we get some actual,
Yeah.
adults in the room to have a conversation about
Well,
what we do so this never happens again.
let me give you the tone. The foreign affairs ambassador for the Knesset, his name is Doni Dona. I joke, I shit you not. And he's like, we need to get to the chopper. He's very Austrian,
I like
extremely
that.
Austrian, with a very Austrian name. Of course, the Jews. But this guy, sounding like Arnold Schwarzenegger, was basically saying, yes, we need to kill them all. He was extremely aggressive, and no, this is enough. We had to go in, and we need to wait. It was very militant, excessively militant. And this is from the foreign affairs ambassador for the Knesset, the
Yep.
dudes who usually try to flower everything, right? That's what their job is, unless you're in China. And then he says, fuck you, America, fuck you, you stupid imperialistic scum. That's China, right? But I was like, whoa, dude, because that's the guy who's supposed to bring tension down. That's
Yes.
a foreign affairs guy's job, is to bring tension down. But he was firing it. So.
As much as people don't like to hear it, the truth of the matter is, historically speaking, especially, the only real war crime is losing. And if this only has been a situation because Israel, one, either wasn't powerful enough to change it, or didn't have the, what's the word I'm looking for, the drive to do so, to actually genocide these people, even though they've been doing it slowly for a while, well, oppressing them slowly for a while. Granted, I'm not saying they don't deserve a lot of it, they do.
Mhm.
Uh, but the truth of the matter is, I think Israel is not that anymore. I think Israel's very strong right now, one of the strongest positions they've been in a very long time, probably ever, at least since their founding. They could do it, and I just don't think the Arab countries can stop them. I think they'll try, right? They'll try to
It'd be
meddle, they'll
very
try and get
bloody
involved,
though, because
but I don't
the
think they can
Jews
stop them.
will fire back. David
Yep,
and the Giant Dreidel, good job, Roger. You're taking a little bit historical thing there, and you're mixing it not only with movie potential but books. Very
yep.
good, good job. Points for you. MC Hamas, our chat. That's wonderful. Anyway, I mean that's all I want to talk about today. So we're probably going to end it here, unless you guys have anything more you want to say on it. But it's really bad. And it's, the world is super hot right now. We know this. There's trouble everywhere. You have proxy wars all over the place between America and various other countries. The only ones we seem to want to talk about is Ukraine, even though there's a proxy war between America and China in Myanmar or Burma right now. No one talks about. How about Sudan? How about Somalia? What's going on in Sri Lanka? What's happening in
Yep.
some of the eastern parts of Indonesia? What's going on in the Philippines? How about all of
Those are
the
mostly
apps?
poor niggers. They don't care about that.
Well, I'm just saying these are similar things, but nobody talking about it. No one's talking about the absolute nonsense that's happening across the entirety of the Middle East. How about Mesoamerica or South America? Lots of crazy shit going on. No one's talking about it. The world is super, super hot right now, and it's looking
Yep.
for a pop. And I've seen a lot of people been making these statements for months, actually, because, and I don't know that I agree, but a lot of people are commenting on the fact that World War III has already started. We're already
Yeah.
in it, right? And there is. It sounds nonsensical, but in a way it is, because what we call World War II or what we call World War One wasn't declared that until way later than we encapsulate it today, right?
That's right.
World War II wasn't really declared a full on world war until the Americans stepped in. And what was that, 41, 42, right? But today we
Yep.
look at World War II as being, mid 30s on. right? Really
Right.
the
Yeah.
30s in general. So there might be some truth to that. I don't know, but it is wicked hot. This situation in Israel is bad, and honestly, like I said, I understand both sides. But if the Israelis go in there and just murder Gaza, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I've been saying this for years that World War III, actual World War III, will be a series of smaller scale, basically civil wars all over the world all at
Which is
once.
what's happening.
Yeah, and that's tragedy. People think that industrial war is bad. Wait till it's everywhere. Wait till there's no corner of any city of any significance that isn't engaged in it in some way.
Mhm.
And then tell me how bad industrial war is. And it is, don't get me wrong. But this will be the greatest bloodletting human history that we know
I'm
of.
I'm
If
really
you think
excited
about
to wait for the progressive non-progressive war.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, because they're gonna fall like flies, and it's gonna be hilarious.
it's coming.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't believe me when I say that, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why there's so many people who think that every American's just going to go quietly into that good night. They're not. Most of them will. Most of them would have before in the revolution, but you don't need most. You need a lot less than people realize to be a problem. And look at, I mean, case in point, what we're looking at right here. Not every Palestinian is involved with what happened, but enough of them were. Now they're a problem. And that's all it takes. It just takes a tireless minority that will not stop, that will never cease. A tireless, ceaseless minority that continues and presses on in the face of all adversity.
Right. And the
And that becomes
Palestinians
a
have
problem.
nothing to live for. They have nothing to die for.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have
They're
they're yeah,
they just exist
they're
and
they're
they
literally
exist to destroy.
prisoners, right?
Yeah,
Of their own design. I mean, to be fair, it's of their own design, but they have nothing to lose.
which
So,
makes
I
them
mean,
very dangerous.
it is very dangerous. Johan says, really concerning world anyway. Enjoying this conversation very much. Love Chester and history buff mode. Oh, thank you. But uh, yeah, Grimlock, you want to have something to say before we end up today?
It's just it's a fucked up situation. But it's not like nobody couldn't have seen this coming,
Mm,
unfortunately.
sure.
And as usual with these kind of situations, it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's going to be the rough part because there's going to be a lot of people who's going to die in the name of this zealotry that had nothing to do with it.
It's true. Yeah.
It's always the way.
It is. All right. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming in. 2 days. For now, we will be continuing our story with the uh, Marvel role playing system, if that's your thing. Of course, later this week we are doing werewolves on Drone Recorder Ultimate Edition. That's always fun. That's always fun.
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
I'm really curious to see what the girls do because as you guys who watch that show know, we have a couple of ladies who are on the show that they don't do really kind of rough. They do cute, wholesome stuff. They're not degenerates like me. Um, so it'll be really it will be cool to see what the girls do with that. Last week we were doing what were we doing?
Lady Death and
Yeah, Lady
pretty good.
Death, Coffin Comics, and they both did good stuff. But Amy did this cute little kitty cat pair, and they represent. It was really well done. So I'm curious to see what the girls do. And of course, Alan here will draw something ridiculous. I don't know really why. Alan should be like in every newspaper every weekend doing funnies. I think that's what Alan
Mm.
should do because he has the ability to encapsulate a lot in a single image. And that's what you need to do those smaller scale things, right? And Alan's really good at that. So, anyway,
What I want to know is who's going to be the one to draw something and use Werewolves of London in the background.
oh, Eric, that'll be Eric.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sounds like
yeah.
an Eric
He'll
thing. Yep.
superimpose the movie poster in the back, and he'll spend the entire time drawing a werewolf, and it'll look great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely Eric. Anyway, thank you all very much. We'll see you next week. Hopefully, we have something more interesting to talk about. I did have a few things I brought up, but honestly, I mean, it's not much. Just the fact that Leslie Jones has admitted that she had many abortions, three, when she was a kid,
Oh
and it saved
God.
her life. So it took three human lives to save your life. Okay, good job.
Well,
Um,
she's the size of 3 humans.
yeah, well, Magic the Gathering has decided that the word
Whoever
witch.
them,
I'm sorry.
whoever
I'm.
those faceless niggas was, who not only decided to stick their dick in that, but not pull out, should be in jail.
That's fair. That is fair. But just the fact that she needed three human deaths to make her life, it's pretty interesting. Magic the
Yep.
Gathering has said that the word witch, druid, and shaman are what is the word? Problematic,
Oh,
Oh,
because they're real world religions. Well, so's magic.
oh, good. To the 5 fat goth chicks who still play Magic the
Magic?
Gathering. Look
Well, I'm
the
just
fuck
saying,
you.
magic itself is an actual religion. So are we going to just change the name?
yep.
Dumbasses. What else I
Fuck with
have
it.
here? Robin Hood. I would suggest for the raw comedy, watch episode one. Seriously, go watch episode one because it's not
Oh,
supposed to be funny, but that is the dumbest shit I've ever seen on a CW show. Now I know it's probably not CW, but it is CW. It's so bad. It's so bad. The dialogue, the acting. Oh, it's ridiculously horrible. And this guy is butthurt like you wouldn't believe. And then, of course, Mark Ruffalo, like that we need to kill all Republicans.
Hmm.
Good job, Mark.
oh, please, can we send him over there?
Yeah, no, well,
Just
he's
give it.
been there
Just
before.
I just want them to try, Chester. That's all.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah.
Just
Well,
please.
He would never. He would never do it.
well,
Look
Mark
at
is
that bitch now.
unhinged, though. We know that. He's
Yeah, but
completely
no,
unhinged.
no, seriously. Does anybody believe he's ever been in a fight, win or lose? I don't care if he's ever just has he ever been in a fight?
No,
Mark?
definitely
Probably
not.
not. No,
Yeah,
these liberals. I mean, you don't talk like that if you've actually had to face danger. I mean, because when you understand, when you have a little bit of violence come at you, and you understand that life is precious and fragile, you tend to have a little bit of a mental shift, right? And these people clearly haven't, right? That when they're talking about, well, I'm
they
going
send
to
that nigga
kill
over there.
this, all of these transgender progressive stuff. They've never they've lived soft lives. They've never gone a day without food. They've never been in actual conflict. Yeah, they don't know. I mean,
No idea.
yeah, no idea. I mean, most humans, and at least in the first world, have never gone a day without food,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I unfortunately have found a few periods in my life where I didn't have food. That was my own stupidity. But at least I experienced it, right?
Yeah,
For a
Yeah.
few months of my life, at least I experienced it, and I understand. I can relate a little bit, right? But yeah. Anyway, take us out of here, Thunder.
It's a very simple one. Evil's face changes, never its nature.
Mhm. Now,